Okay, so we are going to learn Angular, and I'm not going to explain you on a very first day, or in a very first hour, what is Angular, and I'm not going to do that. We would understand what is Angular and what is need of Angular over few hours, over few days. We would directly jump into writing the code and see how powerful it is. But before we move ahead, let me give you a little bit of background. And as I understand, most of you are college pass out, and you may have not done any web development before. So we can create a website, we can create a web application in two ways. There are two set of technologies which you can use to create a website. One set of technology is called server-side technologies, and one set of technologies is called client-side technologies. Now, server-side technologies are, you might have heard these terms, Java, PHP, .NET. They are server-side technologies, and the way we create a website in that, for the end user, it is same in the browser. They use that website, but the whole compilation slash rendering process for those websites are entirely different, and even the thought process to create those websites are entirely different. Client-side technologies are, which are very popular nowadays, React, Angular. And when you create a website using React or Angular or Vue, these technologies are called client-side technologies, and mainly the website which you create using these technologies are called SPA. And here I'm throwing a lot of keywords to you, and just keep those keywords in your mind, and during the training we would come back, revisit those keywords and understand what is meaning of that. uh, stands for single page application. And again, we have the whole theory section, what is SPA, but not now. Once we have confidence of writing a little bit of Angular, we would revisit and learn these terms. So using React and Angular, the web application, the website you create is also known as single page application. Now, single page application, if I can very roughly explain you, all of us have the mobile devices, all of us has either Android or iOS phone, and in those phones you download an app and install that and you use that. If you look at that app, everything is inside the app. That app looks like something single, a single entity, and all the pages, all the views, and every functionality of that app is inside that single app. You don't navigate from one place to another place. You don't get that feeling. And so when you create an application in keeping that kind of user experience in mind, that is called single page application. Keep in mind, in theory, single page application is much more than that. I'm just giving you the kind of user experience when you create a website and you create a single page application. The web application which is created as single page application is closer to a mobile application, instead of instead of a website which you create using server-side technologies. If we understand that in a very simple functionality, so for example, if you create a website using server-side technologies, maybe a click button, maybe, again, maybe we can avoid that, but maybe a click button will refresh the whole page. Of course, to avoid that, you necessarily don't have to create a single page application. There are many things you can do that, but theoretically you can think like that a click button will refresh the whole page, maybe a typical banking website which you open in your browser. However, in a single page application, that would not happen. And a click button will bring you data entirely in different way. And we would come back to that in a bit or later in the training. So Angular, to start with, all of you who are first time learning Angular, Angular is used to create single page application. Now that single page application you can use as a website. Even you can compile that single page application as a mobile application using different tools such that Ionic, etc. So theoretically, Angular is used to create single page application. And as I said, you can compile that single page application either as a web application, which is popularly we do, or as a mobile application using tools like Ionic, etc. Okay. Now, what is Angular? What all things you need to start with Angular? So Angular is a client-side technology. When we say client-side technology, means that technology can entirely run in your browser. And something has to be, if something has to be entirely run in your browser, that thing has to be combination of JavaScript plus CSS plus HTML. So keep in mind that your browser does not understand anything other than these three. So if something is client-side technology, that thing should be combination of these three: JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. So Angular is also combination of, Angular application is also combination of JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. Okay. Now, how we build an Angular application? So to build an Angular application, you need to know a little bit of JavaScript, you need to know CSS, you need to know HTML. Now, JavaScript is complex. Let's be very honest about it. JavaScript is not that easy. JavaScript is complex, and implementing something, even a smallest thing such as class or inheritance or data hiding or encapsulation, those features, if you want to implement in JavaScript, it is not straightforward. JavaScript as a language does not give us those features. So we can use different concepts of JavaScript to achieve those features, but that is not straightforward and that could be complex. So to solve that complexity, Microsoft created a language called TypeScript. And this is your first important lesson of today. As I said, TypeScript is a language created by Microsoft. But can we really call TypeScript as a language? Is TypeScript really a language? That question is very debatable, because a language must be compiled or interpreted, or if it is assembly language, assembled such that your computer or your application directly understand that. However, TypeScript does not fit into any of that category, because TypeScript helps you to simplify your JavaScript, but your browser does not understand TypeScript. Means if you have a file called a.ts and you try to run it in any browser, it won't run because your browser does not understand what is TypeScript. But if you have a file called a.js, browser will execute that. And what does it mean? That even if you are writing a.ts, that has to be converted, compiled, interpreted, assembled, whatever word you want to use, to a.js to be useful. So the conversion of a.ts to a.js is known as transpilation. So when you convert a TS file to a JS file, when you convert a TypeScript file to a JavaScript file, that process is called transpilation. Now, what Angular has done, Angular wants us to write our application faster, and it wants us not to focus on the complexities of JavaScript. So it supports TypeScript. More than 99% of application written in Angular is written in TypeScript. Even Angular itself is written in TypeScript. So whatever you will write inside for an Angular application, you would write TypeScript. But that TypeScript has to be transpiled to JavaScript. All right. So because a.ts, your browser does not understand that. If you just try to execute a.ts, browser would say, hey, I don't know what is a.ts. So that a.ts has to be compiled, has to be transpiled to JavaScript. And the application which does for you is called TSC. TSC stands for, as you rightly guessed, TypeScript compiler. It is named as compiler, but it actually does not compile. It actually transpiles your JavaScript to your TypeScript to your JavaScript. So the first thing Angular application happens is that whatever you write, so you go and write my awesome Angular app in TS, but that has to be transpiled to my awesome Angular app in JS. And the person who does is called TSC. So the first component of an Angular application is TypeScript compiler. This is very important. Note it down. Everyone, I request each one of you to have a physical notebook and notepad and pen with you. Write this word, TypeScript compiler, transpilation. So from here to here, line number what I have highlighted, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to note it down. These words would come back again and again and again. We would write everything in TypeScript, but our browser does not understand that. So that has to be transpiled to JavaScript, and the application which does it is called TypeScript compiler. I'll give you here 1 to 2 minutes to note it down, and then I move forward. All right. Now, so the first component is TSC, TypeScript compiler. Now, the second thing is when you write an Angular application or any application for that matter in JavaScript, and when I say in JavaScript means in React, in Angular, or any client-side technologies, of course, your application is going to have, if you are writing any serious enterprise application, that is going to have 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 JavaScript files. Agree? And all those JavaScript files may be of like 5 MB. I mean, if you combine them together, size of those JavaScript files together maybe of 5 MB, 10 MB, you don't know. That could be any size. The total size of your application could be anything. Now, since most of you are just out of college, how JavaScript theoretically works, how browser theoretically works, that whatever JavaScript you want to execute in browser, what browser does is step 1, it downloads the whole JS file. That is step 1. Step 2, it interprets it. And then step 3, roughly you can think that how a JavaScript gets executed in the browser. Of course, it is much more than that. So the first step, it downloads the whole JS file. Now, let's say that you have created a very large enterprise application and size of that application is in MBs, in megabyte. Now, as step 1, what browser would do, that it would try to download that 5 MB or 10 MB. All right, and it will try to download that. Now, downloading that big size of file is, your user has to wait for a minute or 2, depending on their internet speed. And you do not want that behavior in your application. You want your user to see the first page as early as possible. You want that your web application to the first page at least to render as early as possible. And also, you know that maybe this 5 MB consist of 100 of pages of your web application, and your user may not need all those 100 pages in very beginning. They may need just 1 page, and then they click on something, they select something, then they need another page, and so on. So there's no point of downloading the whole file together. How about downloading that file when it is required? Download an initial set of file and then download the file whenever application needs that. So that functionality is called lazy loading of file. And you can achieve that, like when you write Angular application, you would not, while writing Angular application, you would not realize that. But internally, those kind of thing is achieved by something called bundler. So first you learned about TS TypeScript compiler bundler. Now what bundler does, it bundles your JavaScript application together. And it also does one more important thing, that your application can have hundred of JavaScript file, a.js, b.js, c.js, d.js. And what bundler does, it bundles all. Hello? Am I audible, everyone?
Yes, yes, please continue.
Yeah. So what bundler does, it bundles all those JavaScript files together in one file or two file, or depending on how we are doing the lazy loading and all, we would go that later. But here right now you assume that your application has hundred of JavaScript files, and the job of bundler is to bundle them together and create one file. And if you have enable lazy loading, which we would cover later, more files. But as of now, you understand one file, and such that browser can download that one file together. So now bundling those things together is again, either you can write your own code to bundle all those 100 and 200 and 300 JavaScript files together, or you can rely on other popular open source bundler which are in the market. And some of them are System.js and Webpack. The most popular is Webpack. So Angular internally use Webpack to bundle your application. So Angular use TSC to transpile your TypeScript to JavaScript. Angular uses Webpack to bundles all those 100, 200 JavaScript files together in a single file. All right. And other things for unit test, for the testing and all, also used by Angular. We would go there later. These two are important. Now, before I move ahead and explain you something, let's understand something which is very important called modules in JavaScript. Okay. Now, I'm very sure all of you must have written C, C++, or C# or Java code in your college. Now in C, you know that header files, like what is a header file? It contains all the functions together, like math.h contains all mathematical functions together. In the same way, in .NET world, in C#, you have a concept of namespace, and namespace contains related class together. In Java, you have packages. In JavaScript, we did not have concepts of module until 2016. So there was nothing called module. Everything you are writing in JavaScript was in a single file, and everything is like a big, large file. Now the problem with that is, like if you are, let's say that I'm working on a file called a.js and you are working on a file called b.js, eventually they would become one file. And what would happen, that let's say that I have created a variable called foo, you have created a variable called foo, there would be collision and all those things. So JavaScript came up with in the language as a first class citizen of the language called modules. Now what modules does, it just allows you to create a scope of your file. So now in JavaScript, one file is one JavaScript file, could be one module. It means whatever you are declaring in that module is only scoped in that module and all. So that is JavaScript. That is the modules in JavaScript. So how we do, if I have created a JavaScript code, let's say that I have created something called math.js. If you need that, you can just say import math.js, and all the functions which I have written inside math.js would be available to your JavaScript file, and so on. So that is called modules in JavaScript. Now, how these models work together? When I just talked about bundling together the files, actually it is bundling together those modules, and Webpack helps you to bundle those modules together. Now Angular also has something called modules. Now, Angular modules and JavaScript modules are not entirely the same thing. JavaScript modules are just, it is just a separation between one file to another file. Whatever you are declaring in one JS file is scoped inside that module only. Whatever you are declaring in another JS file is scoped inside that module, and so on. However, in Angular, the module is basic unit of compilation. So whatever you create in an Angular application, whether it's a component or pipe or directive or service, we'll talk about those things later, must be part of a module. Like how you, if you have done C#, you know that all the classes, whatever class you create, must be part of a namespace. In the same way, whatever you create inside Angular must be part of a modules, and module is a basic unit of compilation. So of course, what modules does, it achieves this, means it creates a data hiding or the scope of whatever you have created inside that module. So that is a scope only for that module. Plus, it is also basic unit of compilation, means Angular start compiling your application one module at a time. So your Angular application may have any number of modules. It could have 100 modules, but there will be one main module, and what Angular will do, Angular will start reading your application from that main module, and so on. So keep these modules in mind. Okay, now Angular, so far we have talked about TSC and Webpack. Webpack is a bundler, TSC is a TypeScript compiler, and of course in our application we would write unit test and all. So for that they have something which we'll talk later. Other frameworks like Webpack is bundler. For unit test they have Jasmine and Karma, etc. Okay, so keep this in mind, and let me just do something here. So what happens that in Angular, you write your application. So if you have a business logic, let's say that you are writing a calculator app in Angular, you write that add, delete inside in a TS file. Means in a TypeScript file. Then you'll have one like the view attached to that. So you write that button, text box, etc. in HTML, and if you have CSS like styling, you write that in CSS. Okay, now these three together in an Angular application, a TS file, a CSS file, and an HTML, these three together is known as component. Now, what is component? I'm coming to that in a bit. So combination of a TypeScript file, a CSS and HTML is known as component. And now you know, as you know rightly, that a component must be part of a module. Okay. Now your application, like module, your application can have any number of modules. Your application can have any number of components, but there should be one main component. We would come to that. Now, as you see here, that TypeScript, CSS, and HTML. This TypeScript, CSS, and HTML is, let's say, that component 1 and part of module 1. Then you have TypeScript plus CSS plus HTML. That is component 2. And then let's say that is part of module 2, and so on. Your application looks like that. So your browser, when you will not give different component or like 100 components or 200 components to someone. You will not deploy that. What you will do, you will compile them together first. This component 1.ts would be compiled to something called component 1.js. This module 1.ts would be compiled to module 1.js. Same way, this should be compiled to component 2.js. This should be compiled to module2.js. So to compile, what you need? To compile, you need TSC. And then again, you need to bundle module1.js, module2.js together. For that, you need Webpack. I'm going to use that internally. Now, as a developer, you have a choice. You can go and configure TypeScript compiler. You can go and configure Webpack. And their configuration is a little bit complex. And Angular wants you to build your application faster. It wants you to start writing your application faster. So what Angular has done, Angular team has done, that they have done this configuration part for us. What Angular team has done, they have created something called Angular CLI. Angular CLI stands for Angular Common Language Interface. It is nothing but set of commands. So when you install Angular CLI on your machine, after that, you can run a set of command to achieve a lot of things. So for example, if you want to create a new application, you run a command. If you want to add a component in your application, you run a command. You want to run an application, you run a command. You want to deploy an application, you just run a command. If you don't use Angular CLI, it's still without using Angular CLI, you can write your Angular application, but then you got to do a lot of configuration yourself. So everyone use Angular CLI to write their application. Now to use Angular CLI, what environment we need to write an Angular application, what environment we need. So I had this theory, and we would come back and revisit this theory as much as possible during next 32 hours. But to work with Angular, let's say that you have a computer today and you want to start writing your Angular application. How do you do that? So first step is setting up environment. And this is important, everyone. First, install Node.js. And I'm using here Windows. On Mac, it would be a little different. So install Node.js. Now, how would you know that Node.js is installed on your machine or not? So you'll go here and type node-v. It would, if it says external command or bad command, it means Node.js is not installed. If you get something here, it means Node.js is installed. So here, let me show you how I do that. So I'm on a Windows machine, okay, and here I am sharing my screen with you. Let me know when you can see my command prompt.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, so see, here's my command prompt, Windows machine. I go here and say node v, and here I'm getting some version. It means Node.js is installed on my machine. So the first thing what you need to do, you need to install Node.js to work with Angular. Once Node.js is installed, you need to install, once Node.js is installed, you need to install Angular CLI. And you can install in, and so how would you first identify whether Angular CLI installed on your machine or not? You can go and say ng version. So I'm running ng version, and you see that I got something here, Angular CLI version 11.7 Node version. Then it is telling me Angular version something here, right? If I'm getting this kind of output, it means Angular CLI is installed on my machine. If I'm not getting this output, it means Angular CLI is not installed on my machine. For that, I need to run a command npm run g Angular CLI. Please note down this command. npm run g means I'm installing Angular CLI globally on my machine such that I can create an Angular application from anywhere on this machine. So if you don't have Angular CLI installed, this is the command you need to run after installing Node.js. Everyone noted down this command?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So once, let's say that your Node is installed, your Angular CLI is installed, you are good to go and start writing your application. So here what I'm going to do, here I'm going to create a folder. Okay. And let's see that how I'm creating a first application, how you can create your first application, first Angular application. First, install Node.js, second, install Angular CLI. And then once Angular CLI is installed on your machine, you can say ng new In short, we called Angular as ng. So ng, then new, create a new application, and then you can give any name of your application. I'm calling it as app1. So ng new app1 and press enter. It is asking me that, do you want to enforce stricter type checking, stricter bundle budgets in the workspace? As of now, just press Y and move ahead. I would explain you what is bundle budget and all that. Now it is asking me that, would you like to add Angular routing? Say yes, I want to add Angular routing. Then in Angular, you can achieve styling through these various options: CSS, HCSS, SAS list, stylus. You can put your use arrow key to select. I'm selecting CSS and press enter. So here you see that it is scaffolding many files. So it has created many files, and after that it is installing the packages. The time it is taking to install the package, let me explain you something. And in the chat, there's a question. I think it should npm install g Angular CLI not run. Yes, npm install. Did I say npm run? Oh, no, it's npm install. You are right. npm install, correct. Okay, now the time it is taking to do that, let me just come back and explain you something. So install Node.js, then you have to do npm install Angular CLI. Okay, then you can say ng version to check the version of your Angular CLI, and then you can create a new application, ng new app1, and press enter and yes and yes. But before that, let me explain you something called what is package.json. How many of you are aware of the purpose of package.json? Use chat window to let me know. Okay. So let me explain you what is package.json. So for example, in every programming language, in every framework, you have the dependencies. Your application would have dependencies, right? There's a chat. Perfect. Okay. And here I'm explaining for them who are new to JavaScript ecosystem. So what happens that every framework, in every framework, your application, doesn't matter in which framework we're creating application, that would have some dependencies. So in JavaScript world, whatever dependencies your application has, for example, in .NET, we have web.config for the or the NuGet package for the dependencies. In the same way, in JavaScript, whatever your application has dependencies on, that information is inside package.json. So let's say that if I'm creating an application, a JavaScript-based application, a Node-based application, and then let's say that my application has dependency on for example, let's say Express.js. So it would have one entry of Express.js in package.json. Then let's say that my application has dependency on let's say that SQL Server.js. I'm just taking some random example. So package.json would have these entry. Now what happens that when I give this application to someone, when that person runs command npm install, what Node.js does, it goes and search the file package.json inside that folder, inside that directory. So it goes and searches for the package.json inside that folder, and whatever entry you have in that file in package.json, it goes to npm and install that in your application. And all those installation after npm, you can find inside a folder called node modules. So when you deploy your application, you don't deploy node modules. When you let's say that you are creating an Angular application and you want to share that Angular application with me. What you do, because this node modules is very big, you delete these node modules and you give it to me. I'll get your code, I'll download your code, and then I'll just run npm install. By just running npm install, what it does, that it goes and the npm will go read package.json, install all the dependencies which is entered there, and create a node modules for my system. So this is a practice one for college pass out who are new. Always, before giving your application to someone, deploying your application, make sure that node modules, or even sharing it on GitHub, make sure that you are not pushing node modules in your repository and all that. Okay, so here, if you go back to our thing again, so here you see that it has, I guess, successfully installed. All right, so here let's go and say directory, we have cd app1. Okay, now in the app1, let's say directory, and here you can see that it has this node modules folder. It has this package.json. Now I'm using Visual Studio Code for the development. You can use any IDE of your choice, any text editor of your choice, but the most popular is Visual Studio Code. If Visual Studio Code is installed on your machine, so to start developing for Angular, you need to install Node.js, you need to install Angular CLI, and you should install Visual Studio Code. And if Visual Studio Code is installed on your machine, just press code dot and it will open that directory, that folder inside Visual Studio Code. Now here, you see in Visual Studio Code, here you have this package.json file, which we just talked. Angular CLI has scaffolded an application for you, and the first file we are investigating is package.json. Now in package.json, for the people who are new, these are the scripts. Means when you do npm run build on the command prompt, it will actually execute the command ng build. When you do npm run test, it will actually execute the command ng test. And the command which you see, which starts with ng, is the command, is the Angular CLI commands. Okay, when you do ng e2e, it will do ng e2u, means end-to-end testing. It will execute that command. When you do npm run start, it will run ng sub command. In the same way, here you can go and add your commands if required. So that's the scripts. This section is clear to everyone? Scripts. Then you have two types of dependencies and dev dependencies. What is dependencies? So these are the libraries our application is dependent on: Angular animation, common, compiler, core, forms, and all. So you see that we are using Angular 11 here. And also our application has dependencies on RxJS, TS library. We talked about TypeScript compiler, and then it has a dependency on Zone.js. We'll discuss what is Zone.js later. Okay, so these are the dependencies. Whenever you give this to anyone, and when they run npm install inside this directory, these libraries, will be installed in the node modules folder. Then there is something called dev dependencies. Now, this is very important. What is dependencies and what is dev dependencies? Dev dependencies means you need these libraries, you need these things when you are developing your application. However, you don't need them when your application is deployed. You need them, what is in the dependencies, when your application is deployed as well, but you don't need what is in the dev dependency when your application is in production. You need them only when you are doing the development. So any library which you think you only need while developing, for example, you are doing the TSLint. Now, what is TSLint? TSLint is a standard, it is a coding standard that you should follow, and Angular supports TSLint. There are other standards like ESLint, etc. also. So you need to enforce coding standard only when you are developing your application. So you don't need this library in the production. That's why it is inside dev dependency section. So everyone understand what is difference between dependencies and dev dependencies. Here you see that you have TypeScript in the dev dependencies, because once .ts is transpiled to .js, that .js would go to the production, and you don't need to compile or transpile in the production. It means you do not need that TypeScript library in the production. Making sense? So that's why it is in the dev dependency section. All right, so this is how your package.json looks. Anyone, any question on package.json or whatever command we have covered so far? You can unmute and ask. Or you can use chat to ask. Okay, then at least let me know if you are good. Someone just unmute yourself and say, hey, I'm able to understand everything, or just use chat window to let me know. Let's talk.
Yes, we are good.
Perfect. Okay. So now you understand package.json, and as you know that your application has this node modules folder. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, just to demonstrate, I'm going to delete that node modules again. So I'm saying that, hey, move to recycle bin. Now it is a big folder, so it will take some time to be deleted. You see that it is taking some time. So I have deleted that node modules. Now what would I do? I'll again go and run that npm install, and you'll see that this node modules would get created again. Okay, so it's got deleted. Now here I'll go and say that, okay, let me share my screen. Here I'll say that, hey, see dir, you can't find that node module. So I'll say npm install. It will take some time depending on my internet speed, and install all the dependencies you have entered, you have mentioned in package.json file, and it will install that and create node modules folder. Yes, I'm coming to that. So there's a question in the chat, what is package-log.json? Okay, so it will take some time to install. Let's go back to our Node, our application again. So you see that now you have that everything which you write for Angular application is inside src folder. In the src folder, you see that you have index.html, and then you have a app subfolder. You write your application inside app subfolder. Now in Angular, the very first thing is module. As we talked, module is a type of container. It contains another other features of Angular, like component and pipes and services and all those things. So when you use Angular CLI, what Angular does, it scaffolds the application and it creates one module for you. And that module is right mentioned here. That is called app.module.ts. Then it creates one component for you, which is app.component.ts. Okay, and then it has created another module. You remember that we added routing. So it has created one module which has information about routing. As of now, we can ignore app routing module.ts, and we would focus on app module.ts and other stuff. Now, how you create, so let's say that what convention we follow. Suppose you want to create a component called calculator. The convention is that a file name should be calculator.component.ts, and then it would have HTML. So calculator.component.html, then calculator.component.css, and we would write unit test of that file, that component in calculator dot component dot spec.ts. So these 4 files you got to create. This is a convention you follow when you are creating a component. So let's say that you are creating a component called, if you are, let's say that you are creating a component called hello world, then you would say hello world.component.ts, that is TypeScript, then HTML hello world.component.html, and then CSS hello world.component.css. And the unit test is inside hello world.component.spec.ts. So either you can manually create that, or you can use Angular CLI to create that. So here, how you can use Angular CLI, that I want to create a new component. I want to add a new component in my application. So I'll say ngg. Let's say that my component name is nggc, means ng generate component. You can give the full name also, ng generate and component, or a shortcut is ng, g for generate and c for component. And then here you can get your you can give your component name. So our component name is greet, nggc greet, and press enter. Okay. So here you see that it is telling you the message that created greet.component.html, created greet.component.spec.ts, created greet.component.ts, created greet.component.css, and updated app.module.ts. Now let's go back and examine that. What does it mean? So in the code, now you can see that you have a folder called created greet, and it has all those files. And also, if you go to app.module.ts, here you can see that in the declaration, in the line number 11, you have that greet component entered. So as we talked, that every component should be part of a module. So when you create a component, that has to be part of a module. And how you associate a component with a module? By passing that component name inside the declaration array of that module. Again, how you associate a component with a module? By passing that component name in the declarations array of that module. So here you see that right now my application has 2 components, app component and greet component, and both are passed inside the declaration array. Okay, right now my application has only 1 module, which you can see. And a module can use another modules as well. A module may have dependencies on another modules. So here our module has dependencies on browser module and app routing module. So those are mentioned inside imports array. So if your module has dependencies on other module, you pass that information inside imports array. If your module, whatever component or pipe you want to use, you associate with your module, you pass them in the declaration array. Okay, and the providers I would come later. What is meaning of providers is very important. And then bootstrap app component means your application, your module may have multiple components. Like right now, your module has 2 components, app component and greet component. But out of that, out of those components, 1 component should be the main component. Like if you write a C program, your program may have multiple functions, but there should be 1 main function by which your C compiler identifies that how to enter into the application. In the same way, right now, this app module is main module of my application because we have only 1 module so far. And inside that main module, there are 2 components. We want to make app component as the entry component, as the bootstrap component. So we are passing that in the bootstrap property of the module. Making sense? All the components and pipes will go in the declaration array. All the modules this module is dependent on will go in imports array, and your entry component, your main component, your bootstrap component would go as a part of bootstrap array. Okay, so this is right now your app.module.ts. Now you may ask me that, hey, what if I have 1 more module? Then how would I identify which module is the main module of my application? All right, so for that, let's go and create one module in our application. So here you see that I want to now generate a module. So I'll say so to generate a module, I'll say ng. Can you see my screen? Command prompt.
Yeah. We can check.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
sir.
to generate a module, we would say NGGM. See how easy it is. NGGC is generating a component. NGGM is generating a module. Now you can give any name of that module. Let's say that I'm calling it as a login module. We are going to put all the functionalities related to login inside that module. So we are saying NGGM login. And here, everyone, take your notebook and write what I'm saying. In Angular, there are two types of modules. One is called eagerly loaded module. In Angular, there are two types of modules, and please note it down. The first type is called eagerly waited module, and second type is called lazy loaded module. The first type is called eagerly loaded module, and second type is called lazy loaded module. So the command which you see here on the screen, NGGM login, ng generate module login, creates a eagerly loaded module. Is it clear? To generate a lazy loaded module, there is different syntax, there is different Angular CLI command, which we would cover when we reach there. Okay, so here I'm saying here NGGM login and pressing enter. And here you see that it has created one file, login.module.ts. So if you notice that when we created a component, it actually created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 files for us. However, when we created a module, it created only one file. Okay. Also, very important point that when we created a component, it created a unit test file for that component, like grid.component.spec.ts. And we would learn how to write unit test. However, when we created a module, it has not created any unit test file for that. Can anyone tell me why? Anyone unmute yourself and just tell me why?
For me, it is created.
For
my machine, when I ran this command, spec file is created for me.
Oh, which version of Angular you are using?
I think 10.0.0. I'm not sure.
Anyway, but ideally, I'm not sure it has created for you, but ideally it should not have a spec.ts. Can anyone tell me why?
Because in Angular we are unit testing only components, not modules.
That we are doing. I mean, your answer is partially correct, but why we are not writing unit test of module? That's my question is. Anyone? Come on. Because module does not have any functionality. Module is just a container. You write unit test of functions, right? You write unit test of functionality. You don't write unit test of containers. I mean, of course, module is also a class and you can go and write some function and then write unit test of that. But ideally, the design guideline says that modules should only act as a container. It shouldn't have a functionality. And if you don't have a functionality, you should not have the unit test for that. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes.
All right. So now if I look at here and show you that what it has done. Okay, but before that, okay, yeah. So you see that it has added a login and then login.module.ts. And right now this login.module.ts is there. There's nothing in it. It has just imported a common module and and it's pretty empty. And if you go to app.module.ts, it has even not imported it here because it does not know whether you are going to use login module inside app module or not. So in this way, right now in our application, we have two components, login component and app component. Grid component and app component, and two modules, login module and app module. Now you may have a question that, hey, how Angular is identifying that app module is a main module, how it is identifying that. So that information is inside main.ts. So if you go to main.ts, here you can see that platform browser module in line number 11, and here this is passing the module name app module. Okay, let's go one step backwards. So what happens that when Angular application is loaded in browser, very first this index.html gets loaded. which is right here. Right now, you see that index.html has nothing. It has no reference, nothing. But it has one thing very important in line number 11 is app root. Now, you know that this app root is not a HTML control, right? It's something that does not look like default HTML button or table or default HTML markup. So Angular will load this index.html and it will start identifying what is this app root. And for that, it would go to main.ts. In main.ts, it would go and download this file, app module, because that is the main module file. It would go to app module.ts. In app.module, it finds app.module, app module, and here it sees that, okay, the bootstrap is app component. So it would go to app component, and in the app component, you see that selector is app root. So every component has a selector. By using that selector, you use that component on the HTML, and every component has a class name. By using that class, you use that on in another TypeScript classes. Okay, so here you see that how a component looks. Component is a class, so it is exported because we want to use it outside this TS file. It has a selector. It has a template URL, means the location of HTML, which is associated with this component. And then it has a style URL, which is an array, means one component can have more than one CSS files, and that is passed here. Keep in mind that this style URL is optional. It may happen that your application has only one CSS file, and that is inside style.css. So Angular application can have CSS in style.css, which is the global CSS for whole application. And each component can have its own CSS also. Now and each application can have, each component can have more than one CSS of its own, because app.component.ts takes an array in styles URL. So now how the global styles.css and CSS of a particular component relates to each other, work with each other, we would cover that in a bit. So here is app.component.ts. Now in app.component, we have this title app1 and then some HTML, which is scaffolded by Angular. We are going to get rid of that, and we would here say, let's say that just h1 and hello world. Okay, so here we modified that h1 hello world, and then we have a grid component as well. So in the grid component, you see there's nothing, so we would go here and it has grid works. Okay, now I want to use this grid component in the app component. How would I do that? Go to grid component.ts. You know the selector name is app grid. Just take this, say Control C, go to app.component.html, and you just use it like any normal HTML markup, app grid. And then you say file, save, auto save is on. Now to run this, we would go to command prompt and say ng build. What ng build does, it only builds your application. So here we are building it. While developing, you don't have to build it each time. You just have to serve it. I'll show you how to do that. The time it is taking to build, if you have any question, I would be happy to answer. And if you notice that the message inside build command, you would figure out that what we talked about, we just talked that Angular modules are not same as JavaScript modules. And here you see that it is compiling these Angular core, Angular common, which are actually Angular modules inside JavaScript modules, ES2015 and so ES2015 or ESM2015 are JavaScript modules, and it is compiling into two different types of module. One module for the latest browsers and one module for browsers which is not for older browsers. Okay, so once it has compiled, then it is building the bundles. If you have any question, I'm happy to answer. There's a question in chat. We have created grid component command ngc grid, and by default it is created within the app folder. Can you explain why? Very good. So see, if you don't provide any, so there's nothing called folder, Janil. Am I pronouncing your name correctly, Janil?
Yes.
So Janil, there's nothing called folder. Forget about folder. There's nothing called folder in Angular. We call that modules. So when you don't specify explicitly that in which module you want to create the component or pipe or anything, what it does, it creates that inside the main module. In our application, the main module is app folder. Main module is, it will create a folder for that component and then put it as part of the module. Making sense? If you want to create that, let's say that grid component inside a specific folder or inside a specific module, you need to explicitly pass that. And I'll just show you how you can pass that. Okay.
Okay.
So let's say that right now we have a login module, right? We created a login module and we want to create a login component, and we want to make that component as part of the login module, not part of the app module. How we do that, I'm going to show you next. Okay. Very good question. Anyone else? Come on, we have 26 people. You just Atis, Asis, Asutosh, Devendra, Dharya, Dhaval, Drashti, Janil, Nidhi, Parth, Nimisa, Raj, Rutvik, Ravi, Vivek, Gunjan, Janik. Please ask questions. It is going to be complex, more complex from here onwards. So please ask questions. Very good question. What is the use of polyfill.ts? Very nice question. So what happens that when .ts gets transpiled to .js, that .js follows a JavaScript standard, a ECMA standard. And that is configured inside your Angular.json file. Okay, so for example, the current version of JavaScript or ECMAScript is ES2020, right? Some of the browser may not understand the version in which the TypeScript is compiled to. Some of the older browsers. So for example, your TypeScript function is compiled to an arrow function. For example, in JavaScript, there's something called arrow function, and your TypeScript compiler compiles your TypeScript function to an arrow function. And then you are trying to open that website inside a browser which does not understand ES6. So what polyfills.ts does, it detects the browser and then it generates the code which is understandable by that older browser version of browser. So it may change that arrow function to a function expression which is understandable by the older browser. So the purpose of polyfill.ts is to make sure that whatever code is generated by your Angular application is running in the older browser itself. If some of the code feature is not understandable by older browser, polyfills.ts comes to the action and take care of that. Understood?
Yeah, got it.
Ravi is asking, it is taking more time than expected anyway. There are two more files, angular.json and tsconfig.json. And what are these files? Very good question. And I was just going to explain that next. So package.json is clear to you. tsconfig.json contains information about your TypeScript compiler. That, like right now, I just discussed that in which version of JavaScript your TypeScript should transpile to. Those kind of information is inside tsconfig.json. And Angular.json contains information about your Angular application configuration, Webpack configuration, etc. Okay?
Yes, got it.
Uh, Very rarely you will change tsconfig.json. You may have to change angular.json a few times. I'll show you when. And package.json automatically gets updated the way you install and all. This is interesting. Let me do one thing. Let me. Oh, okay. Anyway, so that is how you it builds your application, and here you see that how it has built your application. Okay, so right now my application have login component, login module, greet component, app component, app module. There's so many things. But when you build your Angular application, Angular actually builds your whole application into these 4 files: vendor.js, polyfill.js, main.js, runtime.js, and style.css. Only these files would go and get deployed on your web server. And also it is showing you the sizes of those files. So now you understand who is doing this task. There's no TS file here, right? So there's no TS file because TypeScript compiler is in the action. There's only one JS file, means all the files are bundled together. That is because due to the bundler webpack. Okay, and we did not configure that. We just installed Angular CLI and we are writing our application. Anyway, I wanted to show you that ng build. We would cover that in detail later. But while developing, you should use the command ng serve. Ng new, ng serve. Ng serve, what it does, it helps you to do live development. So here, when you run ng serve, okay, it will generate the bundles. It will help you in debugging, and you can run your application in the browser and see in the live that how you are doing the development. So here it says that, hey, compiled successfully. Okay, so let me go and open the application. By default, it opens on 4200 port. And here you see that localhost hello world and greet works. If you go ahead and say view inspect, and you see that your app root is there, and inside app root you have app greet. Now what happens that whatever component you created is actually getting rendered in your browser. All right, so this is your first application. Now, something very important to understand. In your Angular application, whatever you see and interact with is Angular component. So here you see hello world is a component. Here you see greetworks is a component. Makes sense? And since your user has to interact with and view the component, that's why component has a HTML associated with that. Now, next, let me go and open the code again. So here we are using app greet, right, inside app component. But what I'm going to do from app.module.ts, let's say that I'm deleting this greet component. So I have deleted that greet component, saving it. And then again, I'm going to run the application. Okay. Yeah.
Manju, you are sharing the studio.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for reminding me. So here you see that I removed that greet component from the module, and here Angular is giving me an error that app greet is not unknown element. Of course, because we are using it on the app component. However, go back a step back. we talked that module is a basic unit of compilation in Angular. Now, inside that module, we are using app component and grid component. However, we have removed reference of grid component from the declaration array of app module. So when Angular compiled that app module, it had no information about what is grid component. But we are using that grid component on app component. And since the grid component is not present in the declaration array, and we are using it in app component, Angular is complaining that app grid is not a known element. Angular does not know what is app grid. All right. So this is the error I wanted to show you. We can get rid of this error very quickly by just again putting grid component back, saving it, save, and then here again, if we see, we are getting here compiled successfully. So now you understand what is the purpose of declaration array. Let me see, there's a question in chat. In NGBuild, we can see Blender.js is much large against others. Any others? Yeah, because Blender.js is your whole Angular thing. Which you saw in the package.json or dependencies section. All right, now what I'm going to do, which screen you are able to see? Command prompt?
Yeah.
Okay, now what I want all of you to, on your machine, and randomly, I would ask any one of you to share your screen. So be ready for that. I could ask randomly any one of you to share your screen. So you have exactly 8 minutes. If you have not done it, install in Node, install Angular CLI, and do your first ng new, and do your first ng serve, and whatever browser you are, whatever output you are getting, show in the browser. You have 8 minutes to do it. It's 10:17, 10:25. I may ask any one of you to share your screen and show out of 27. Okay. And here I'm writing the commands again for you. If you have any difficulty, ask me. Install Node.js, install Angular CLI. ng-serve. In the meantime, anyone, if you have any question, please do ask. Okay, the chat, there's one question. While creating application, we allowed app routing.ts. What will be the approach to work around if we deny to create app route? Okay, so there are two questions in the chat. First question is, while creating application, we allowed app routing.ts. What will be the approach or work around if we deny to create app route? Then you have to manually add it again. So see that app.routing.module.ts is nothing but just a file. So if you look at here, it is nothing but just a file, app routing.module.ts. So if you have not generated it at the first time, you can just go here and say my app routing.module.ts, and then whatever course is generated here, you may have to pass it manually here, and in app.module.ts, you would say that module name is my app routing module, You need to pass that. Okay. Is it your answer clear, Janik? Okay. The next question is, once we build our app, Angular is generating two set of files. One is .js and other is .js.map. What are these map files? So Vivek, can you tell me when that file was created, in the build or in the serve?
I guess after building.
Where did you see that?
In that, so in my PC, after I run that ng-build command, the output is somewhat different from yours. And
So
if you go into that particular,
what version of Angular you are using? Can you just check and let me know?
sure,
NGV, do NGV.
yeah.
Or in the package or JSON, you can do, you can just check the version of Angular. What file you guys are able to see, the code?
No, the browser.
Oh,
So the
not
Angular CLI is 10.2.0.
and Angular version. You can check the Angular version. How would you? So for everyone, if someone is asking you that, hey, which version of Angular this application is built in, how do you check? You will just go to, so in Visual Studio Code, if you press Control P on Windows machine and type whatever file name you want to navigate to, so quickly you can navigate to, and here you see that you say that here, you can tell that we are using Angular version 11 here. So what I would recommend each one of you, if Angular CLI is already installed on your machine, please upgrade that to the latest version. How do you do that? Let me open that, okay? So everyone, please make sure that you are on the latest version of Angular CLI. So just do that, do ng version, and then do npm uninstall Angular CLI. I'll explain your mapping question. I'm just first bringing you on the latest version, okay, Vivek?
Yes, sir.
Okay, everyone, if you already have Angular CLI installed previously, please upgrade it to the latest version. First is do ng version, find out the version, then do npm uninstall. Exactly the same, but instead of install, do uninstall, npm uninstall g Angular CLI. Once that is done, then run the command npm cache clean. I guess now it is not required, but just see npm cache clean, and then again install npm install g Angular CLI latest. For other people, are you able to, like, please tell me who among you who is not able to install Node.js 8? Everyone Node.js installed? So the question is in other way.
Which is the
Anyone needs help in installing
Yes, sir.
Node.js? Anyone needs help in installing Node.js? Please unmute yourself and ask. Okay, I think no one. Okay, anyone needs help in installing Angular CLI or upgrading Angular CLI? Unmute yourself and ask. Anyone who needs help in installing Angular CLI or upgrading Angular CLI, please unmute or ask.
Yes, sir. I am Atish Bagri.
Yeah.
So in npm cache clean, I am getting errors.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Cache post.
Yeah, that's why I said now no longer you need npm cache clean. This blog post I wrote in 2017. So ignore that step, do the next step. npm install g Angular CLI.
Okay.
Which is the latest version of ng 11. 11 or 12? 11, I guess. Anyone completed up to NG new? If you need your help, if you need help, ask, because uh, like it is going to get more and more concepts coming your way. So you have to be very proactive asking questions. Don't shy away asking questions. Yeah.
Sir, I'm getting an issue in installing the latest version.
Installing Node or installing Angular CLI?
Angular.
What error you are getting? Can you share your screen?
Okay, yes.
Let me stop sharing. Now you can share.
Okay. It's visible.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, this.
Just a minute. Can you try running your command prompt as an administrator?
Okay.
And then try it. Come out of system 32. No, come to C drive, cd dot dot.
Okay.
Then show me node V.
Node V.
Yeah, the version of node. No, run that command right there. Node, Node V. Yeah. Okay. Now do npm install -g @ Angular CLI.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, this time it would install, okay?
Yeah.
But wait, let's see. Why? ng? No, ng hyphen version. Yeah. Okay, so I guess you need to add this to your what to say global variable, that that Angular thing. Yeah. Just look at the internet how to add Angular CLI to global variable of of Windows. Okay. Everyone else, you got it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, created new app.
Okay, so okay, so let me ask. Let me choose someone.
Hello.
Yeah, Drashti, tell me.
Yes. I also face issue in installation of Angular.
What issue you are facing? Like same external command issue or some other issue?
No, no. It give me error in npm itself. Please report this error to npm.community.
Okay, is your office laptop or it is your
Yes,
own
yes.
laptop?
Office laptop.
Is the firewall and all are open in that?
Yeah.
Okay, so whoever is not able to install, I'll come to you later individually and try to install it. Let's move forward for the next concept, to the next concept. Is it okay? So
Okay, okay.
I see only Drusty is left. Otherwise, everyone is done. All right.
Sir, in my laptop, it is stuck at the rollback failed option. It is not moving forward.
Yeah, must be some internet issue and all. If you try it again, it should. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So now, next we are going to learn the first concept of Angular called data binding. And everyone, even if it is installed, not installed, it's fine. I'm giving you a break of 2 minutes, okay? Or 4 minutes, 10:35. We are going to start very important concept of Angular. So come up with fresh mind. Drink water, 10:35, we are starting in 3 minutes, okay?
Okay, sir.
All right, I'm back. Everyone here?
Yes.
Okay, and you are able to see my
Yes.
notepad?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. Now, data binding is one of the most important topic of Angular. And if you're a beginner in Angular, this is something which you should be very confident about. Now, keep in mind that this data binding is not something which is unique to Angular. Data binding is everywhere, in every framework, in every libraries where you deal with UI and code behind. Now in Angular, you have component, and component has a UI. So when we ran that application, you saw that hello world and a grid component in the browser. So that is UI, means HTML, and it has a code behind. That is TypeScript file, that TypeScript class. So how data flows between that TypeScript class to HTML and vice versa is determined by data binding. So let's say that in component, you have a TS file and then you have a HTML file, right? So when you pass data from, so let's say that there's a data called name in TS file, and name is equal to Jacob. And when you just want to display that data in HTML, you display that using this syntax. So you just pass this name variable, which you declared in TypeScript file, inside two curly braces on the HTML. And this is one-way binding. One-way binding means only data is flowing from TypeScript class to HTML. And this is also known as interpolation. Okay. So what is happening that when you have to, there's one way of data from TypeScript class to HTML, that is called interpolation. And in that, you use this type of binding to display the data. And the syntax for that is double curly braces. And it is also known as interpolation. So here you mainly use for the display of data. Okay. The second is that, let's say that you have a functionality, you have something on HTML for in the TypeScript, let's say that height equal to 90. And this is also one way, means it is going the information, the data from your TypeScript class to HTML. But instead of displaying, here what you are doing, here you are displaying that data. Okay. However, here, instead of displaying, let's say that you want to set a property. Property means, when I say set a property, means setting height, width, color, and those kind of thing of HTML elements. So when I say that, hey, there is a property called height in TypeScript class, and value of that is 90, and there is an image on my HTML, can you set height of that image to the height property, which is declared in TypeScript class? So keep in mind, here we are setting property of height property of the image. We are not displaying the height on the HTML. So when you do that, again, the data has to flow from TypeScript class to HTML. And this is done using a square bracket syntax. And here you say, let's say that style dot height dot px equal to this height, which we have created, this variable in the TypeScript class. And this is known as property binding. So second type of binding is property binding. In property binding, what you do, you set height, you set property of a HTML element with a variable which is declared on your TypeScript class. In interpolation, what you do, you just display that. In property binding, what you do, you set the property. And both are data flowing from TypeScript class to your HTML. The third is that you have, let's say that a function called get data on your TypeScript, and you want to call that function on some of the events, some of user action which happens in your HTML file. It means user clicks on a button, user drag and drop, user performs some action on your HTML, and on basis of that action, you need to execute something in TypeScript class. That is, in that in that scenario, if you look at the data is flowing, the information is flowing from HTML to TypeScript, and that is done using a small bracket. So let's say that on click, you want to call that get data function. On the button click, you'll do like this, and this is called event binding. So Angular has only these three bindings: interpolation, one way, where you want to display data from TypeScript class to HTML. Then second, when you want to set property of something on HTML from TypeScript data, that is called property binding. That is in the square bracket. Interpolation is in double curly bracket. And when on some user actions such that event, button click, drag and drop, you want to execute something on TypeScript class, that is called event binding. So Angular has only these three types of binding. Okay, interpolation, property binding, and event binding. By default, Angular does not have two-way data binding. When I say two-way data binding, means your HTML and your TypeScript both are exchanging information. If you look at all these three types, they are one way, like either data is moving from HTML to TypeScript, or it is moving from TypeScript to HTML. But to achieve but in a scenario where you want to exchange data both ways, that is called two-way data binding. And in two-way data binding, Angular does not have by default two-way data binding, but you can achieve that in Angular by combination of property binding, means setting the property, plus event binding. So two-way data binding in Angular is displayed like this. And this is also known as banana in the box syntax. So whenever you see this syntax in Angular, that is two-way data binding. So interpolation, displaying, curly braces, property, a square bracket, event, a small bracket, and two-way data binding, banana in the box syntax, a small bracket inside curly bracket. So these are the bindings available to you in Angular. Now, why you need binding? To and fro data between your view and your TypeScript class, between HTML and TypeScript class. Okay, so let's see them in the action. You are able to see my screen, the code? No, right? So let me see my code. Okay, now you should be able to see my code, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's first see the interpolation, the first type of binding. Let's say that here I have something called message, and I'm saying message is hello world. Now you see that this message, this is a data on your TypeScript class. Of course, here it is hard coded, but it may happen that this data is coming from an API, coming from anywhere else, right? But here it is hard coded, that's fine. Now we have a requirement to display this data on the components HTML. And how we can do that? So go to grid.component.html, and right here you can display that in a double curly bracket. You need to pass that variable name. So here variable name is message. Take this and pass it here. Now you can put that inside any HTML tag. I'm putting that in H1. So you see that H1 message. Now what would happen that we just, now when Angular compile this application, it would display this message, hello world. I'll say not hello world, greet world, such that we can verify this. Okay, save. And now we are using this app greet on the app.component.html right here. So we should have an output hello world and hello greet world. Okay, so let's go that and run this application. So in the browser, message equal to greet.component.ts. Let me first run this. So always keep in mind, people get always confused in between property binding and interpolation. Interpolation is a one-way data binding, but it is used to display the data. Property binding is also one-way data binding. In both types of binding, data flows from component TypeScript class, component class to component view. But in property binding, you set the property of HTML elements. In interpolation, you just display that. Okay, so if I show you this here, you can see that you have hello world and greet world. Okay, so that is interpolation. Next, let's go back to code again. Now see that how property binding works. Let's say that I have something called height is 300. Okay, and width as 100. So here I have two properties, height and width. Again, this height and width also can come from API and anywhere else. Now we have a requirement that here there's a button here on git.component.html, and that button says that click me. Okay, and right now when you run this application, file save, instead of click me, here we can say message, right? And then here message is greet world. Okay, so right now when you run, you see that how I am using interpolation inside a button. You can use it anywhere, and then get rid of this H1, save it, and when you go back, and if you see this output, you see that you have hello world and greet world. Greet world is of course doing nothing, and we are able to use interpolation and change the text of the button. But now we have a requirement to increase, to set height and width of this button as of height and width property here, which is created, height equal to 300 and width. So how we can do that? To do that, we will use property binding. And how we'll do property binding? Property binding is a square bracket. So here we'll say square bracket style dot height dot px equal to height. So his height is representing height. See, you can give any name here, foo. Don't get confused that for height we have to have a variable name as height and something. No. So here I'm saying that he set height to foo. So we have taken this foo and here setting foo. And then the other property binding, we can set a style dot width dot px equal to width, I guess, right? Yeah, width. So now if everything is correct, size of that button, the height of that button should be 300 and width of that button should be 100. So let's go and check that. And here, as you see that you have height and width set to 300 and 100. So what property binding does, it sets the property of HTML elements. It does not display, and interpolation displays, and that's why you are getting that greet world as a text of the button. Now when we click on this button, there's nothing happening. Let's say that on click of this button, what you want, on click of this button, there's a function here called get data, and you want to call that function on click of that button. Inside that, I'm just saying console.log get data. Okay, and you should never use alert inside your component, never, but just to show you how it works, how event binding works, I'm using it, but you should never use in your application alert inside component. Okay, so here I'm saying save, and let me go back to, and then we can do the event binding, and event binding is a small bracket, and we want to call that function on the click event of this button. So here we'll say click equal to get data. So take this get data and pass it there. Okay, file, save, and let's go back to the output. Let me share this, that screen, and here you see that you have hello world, greet world. When you click on this, you're getting get data, and if you press F12 in the console, you can see that twice get data you have. Get data, you are getting the get data each time. Okay, so this is called event binding. So you just saw in demo interpolation and event binding and property binding. Now how you can work with two-way data binding. So let's say that I have a input here, type equal to number. Okay, and what I want that whatever input we put, whatever number we put,
the editor is not visible.
Oh, okay. So now what we want that whenever whatever number we put in that input type, that should become the height of the button. Right now it is hard coded with one property foo. Right now what we want that whatever we enter, that should become the height of the button. So how we should do that? So here we have input type number, and let's say that here we are saying that press enter height of button. Okay, so here you can see that we should have here enter height of the button. Whatever if we enter 100, the height of the button should become 100. If we enter 600, height of the button should become 600. And also what we want that when we click on this button, whatever is the default size, it should restore to that default size. So the requirement is whatever number we enter in this text box, that should become height. And when we click on that, it should restore to the default height. And for that, how we can do that? Let's go to the grid.component.ts, and let's say that this is default height equal to 300. So what we want, and let's say that default height is 100. So whenever user clicks on that, we would say this dot default height is equal to 100. Okay. So requirement 1 is done. Whenever user clicks on that button, we are setting default height to 100. Now we have here, let's say that h text box value, and that is of type number. And let's say that by default that is also 100. Okay, or we can do one thing, this dot default height. No, we don't need another variable. We have this default height, or we can just call it as height equal to 100, and here we'll say this dot height equal to 100. Now what do we need to do? That we need to bind this height with this text box. And whenever a user enters something in that text box, that should get updated in that variable. And whenever that variable value changes, this input text box value should also get updated. It means we need to achieve the two-way data binding. And we achieve two-way data binding using banana in the box syntax. We'll say ng model equal to height. Okay. So here we would say ng model equal to height, and then style.height is height. Okay. And now let's go and run this. So this is the way you achieve two-way data binding, ng model height, and file, save. And let's see that what we are getting in the output. Okay, we are not getting expected output, of course, right? Let's press F12 if you are getting some error. There's no error here in the output. Okay. Let's see the command prompt where it is compiling. And in the command prompt, you can see that it is again giving you input type number, ng model height. And again, the same type of error you are getting can't bind to ng model since it is not a known property of input. Similar type of error we got when we were trying to use app grid, the grid component without declaring it in the app module. Right. So here we are trying to use ng model, but of course, when Angular is compiling app module, it does not know what is ng model. It means that ng model is part of some module which we have to import in app module to work with. Okay. So how we can do that? Let's go to here again, and there's a question in chat. Wow, I'm not able to open the chat. Yes, I wanted to show that error for the benefit of the class. Okay, so everyone understand why that error is there, because we are using ng model and it is part of a module which is not included in app module. So for that, we'll go to app module, app.module.ts, and let's import that. So that ng model is part of forms module. So here we'll say forms module, and here it has imported from Angular Forms. Sometimes if you write something here and to get the default import, just press Control dot and VS Code would give you suggestions. Okay, so here we have imported forms module. Save it. And you are able to see my screen code, right? Visual Studio Code.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now I'm compiling that again in the command prompt. So here I'm compiling that again in command prompt after importing the module. Compiled successfully. Let's go and check the output. Here you see that you have greet world, hello. If I make it 1000, you see it is becoming 1000. If I change this to 10, it is becoming 10. If I'm saying 676, it is becoming 678, because what is happening, that whatever value you are entering in this text box, that is getting assigned to that variable height. So the data is going from HTML to TypeScript, and then from TypeScript, that data is coming back to set height of this button using property binding, and height of this button is being changed according to whatever value we are passing here. We also wrote a code that when we click on this button, the height should restore to default height, which was 100. So see, when I click on this, it has become 100, and also this value has become 100 because is two-way data binding. So when the value of height property is changed from anywhere, that is being updated in this text box as well. So to summarize, in Angular, you have three types of data bindings. Actually, interpolation to display data from TypeScript to HTML, and interpolation is done using curly braces. So here it is, you just use that. So interpolation is done using, let me open that. So this is interpolation to display, that is done using curly bracket. Then property binding is done using a square bracket, and it is to set property from some value from TypeScript. Then event binding is using a small bracket. Here you can pass any events and call a function on TypeScript class. And then two-way data binding is banana in the box syntax, and it is combination of property binding and event binding. So these are the bindings all of you should understand. And if you have any question, I'm happy to take that on binding.
All good.
Yeah, ask. No question?
Yes, we are good.
Very good. Now, let me introduce something which is very little bit complex to understand. Okay. But before that, I'll give you 1 minute time to note down, summarize whatever you have understood from, whatever you have understand from data binding for everyone. And then for next 5 minutes, I'll talk something which is very important and it would be very useful when you are writing application and debugging. Okay, everyone? All right, now let me ask question to each one of you. How many of you have done a little bit of Angular before? Anyone has done a little bit of Angular before?
I think most of us.
Most of you have done a little bit of Angular before. Okay. Then understand this question. Let us say our manager is coming to us and asking us to use a calendar control. There's a requirement to use a calendar in our application. Okay. Now Angular does not have calendar. You can use Angular material, but as of now, let's forget that. So our team is already expert of .NET and jQuery, and they have already worked on jQuery before, and they are very comfortable with jQuery controls. So they thought jQuery is JavaScript, Angular is JavaScript. How about using jQuery calendar in Angular? Can we use that? They thought, okay, it is a good idea. Let us use it. So what they did, they went ahead and they installed jQuery in Angular application. So package.json is updated. There's a jQuery dependency in node modules. Everything looks good. Whatever was the required, they did that. And then they came here and let's say that they did jQuery calendar. Something like this they can do, right, everyone? Now, in jQuery calendar, they have events such that select date, change month, change year, and so on. So they thought, okay, we have a jQuery calendar. So let's say that we need to call a function when user is changing the date. And in Angular, any event is done using a small bracket. So they did here, let's say that event name is change date. So here, they wrote a code, something like this, change date. Since change date is an event, they put it inside a small bracket. And then they are saying that, hey, let me call a function called change date. And of course, here in the file, they went ahead and created right here, they went ahead and created a function called change date. And this function here, console.log, go to change date. All right. So they already have jQuery installed in this application and everything is done. And they're trying to use jQuery control event as using the event binding of Angular, something like this pseudo code which is in front of you. So everyone understand the scenario?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
now my question to you is, will this work? Let us assume that all configuration and installation is correctly done. And if I ask that question in a more specific way, my question is, can I use a third-party library event using Angular event binding inside an Angular application? What do you think? Think and answer. Anyone want to give a try? Okay, let us guess what you think. It may be wrong and right. That is perfectly fine. We have 30 more hours to learn all of this. But just guess what you think.
It won't work.
It won't work?
It won't work.
Okay.
It will not work.
And why you think so? Just do a blind guess if you can. Don't worry. It is okay if answer is wrong or right. I just want to understand how you think. Or anyone can volunteer to answer that.
Because I think jQuery dash calendar, that should be a selector of any one of the components, right? Only then we can edit that.
Okay. Okay. So you are saying that if I make that jQuery calendar as Angular component, it may work.
It may work, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Nice way of thinking. Good. Anyone else? All right. Very good. So yes, it would not work. And why it would not work? And that is I'm going to explain, and that is very important. Okay, everyone. You remember, if you go to our code here and open package or JSON, here in the somewhere you have, you see, Zone.js. Okay. Of course, this Zone.js is an external library, means it does not start with @Angular, means it is an external library. Now, what Zone.js does and why that Zone.js is there and why that jQuery control would not work, all are related to each other. So what Angular has done that for all the popular HTML controls, all the popular default HTML controls, for example, button click, button drag, button drop, a table selection, all those default HTML controls like button, table, list, and those things, radio button. What Angular has done that for all the popular events on those default HTML control, for example, click or select and all those, what Angular has done, Angular has encapsulated those events. So all the popular events of all the default HTML browser controls. For example, a popular event is a button click. Okay. A popular event is select a radio button. So what Angular has done, that it has taken all popular events of all default HTML control and encapsulated them using Zone.js library as an asynchronous event. So what Zone.js does, it makes an event as an asynchronous event. Okay, so you can use Zone.js in any JavaScript library to make an event. When I say event, it means button click, as an asynchronous event. What Angular has done, it has used the same Zone.js library to convert all popular events of popular controls as an asynchronous event, like button click and all that. So any event which is converted as an asynchronous event is known as running inside Zone.js, running inside ng zone, running inside ng zone. Making sense? So any event which Angular team has taken and encapsulated and made it as an asynchronous event using Zone.js library, we call those events that they are running inside ng zone. And any event and the events which are running inside ng zone only works with event binding. So those jQuery controls, of course, Angular team has not taken those jQuery controls, has not encapsulated those change date event as a asynchronous event using zone.js, and those events are not part of ng zone, and that's why by default they will not work with event binding. Of course, you can make them as part of ng zone. You have to write code for that, but by default they are not part of ng zone. So any event which is part of ng zone can only be work with event binding in Angular. Now, this is very important. You may think that why Angular has not allowed every event to be part of ng zone such that every event should work with event binding. Because whenever you fire an event in Angular, means whenever a user clicks a button in Angular application, by default, we'll cover this in detail on the last day or second last day in a detail 4 hours. But as of now, understand it, that whenever a click happens in your application, whenever any event which is part of ng zone gets fired in your application, what Angular does, it runs change detection on due to that by default. So clicking a button is a expensive operation inside Angular. So what Angular team has thought that, okay, these operations are popular applications. Operations means if user is clicking a button, it means user is trying to change the state of application. If user is entering something in text box, means user is trying to change the state of application. If user is dragging and dropping, means user is trying to change something, state of the application. It means user is trying to run the change detection. Now, what is change detection? I'm not going into detail of that today, but in one line, you can think change detection is the person who makes sure that your data in component class and the reflection of the data on your HTML file are in sync with each other. What does it mean? That whenever value of message changes, on TypeScript on the .ts, that updated value should get reflected on this HTML, and that job is done by change detector. We'll cover that in detail on last day, but whenever you click a button, whenever you do any event in Angular, that change detector runs, and that's an expensive application, expensive run, like in context of performance and all. So that's why what Angular team has done, that they have only incorporated popular events inside ng zone, and only the events which are part of ng zone can work with the event binding. Making sense? It does not mean that you cannot put, if you want to use jQuery control in your application, you can use it. And then you have to manually encapsulate those jQuery controls or jQuery events, controls events rather, in ng zone to work with event binding. Have I made sense, everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll summarize what I just said. Okay, so with event binding, whenever an event happens in your application, or whenever an event your user raises, Angular by default runs change detector. The purpose of change detector is to make sure that your HTML and your TypeScript are in sync with each other. It is much more than that, just in one line, if I can roughly put that. All right. Now, if you allow every event to run change detector, the performance of your application would be very, very, very bad. So what Angular has done, it decided on our behalf that people are going to use only popular controls such that button and all those things, and user is going to use only popular events of those popular controls like click and drag, drop and select, etc. They have encapsulated that using zone.js library to make those events as an asynchronous event. And all those asynchronous events are known as part of ng zone. Sometimes to increase performance of our application, like let's say that we have user which is keep clicking, like 10 times. So to avoid that, we may sometimes take an event and put it outside the NG zone also. That is not advisable, but many people do that to improve performance of their Angular application. So go back to our fundamental question that why jQuery calendar change that event may not work, because that is not part of NG zone. So whenever you see that you are using an event and that is not working, that is not calling the function inside TypeScript file, the first thing should come in your mind that, hey, is this event part of NG zone or not? And you got to check that to debug. Okay, everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
I'm ready to take at least 2 questions on this topic, on everything from binding to NG zone.
So let's say if we want to add some event in zone, NG zone, then how can we do that?
We'll cover that later, not today.
Okay.
See, I'll break your question in 2 questions. Okay. So one question is that if you want to add those jQuery controls events and all in NG zone, that is question number 1. And question number 2 is that the component which you are creating, that is also a control, right? If you want to add that inside NG zone. So anything which you create, those component and all inside your Angular application, you don't have to do anything extra. Angular will take care of that. For third-party libraries, you got to manually add that. And that is a reason whenever you use third-party library, they say that, hey, this is a Angular library. Means they have taken care of those things. Okay, did I answer your question?
Yeah.
So if you want to create a new event, which we'll cover tomorrow, there's something called event emitter. You create that event, a new event in Angular using a class called event emitter. So whenever you create something using event using event emitter, by default, that is part of NG zone.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So here what I want, let's move further. Let me see what is next we have. So data binding we have covered. Let's see that how we can work with directives. Now in Angular, let me know if you are able to see my notepad.
Yeah, we can say.
Okay. So far you have heard the term modules, you have heard the term component. Okay, modules is nothing but a container. Component is kind of a control, what your users see, what your users interact. And component is a combination of HTML, CSS, and TypeScript, right? The third thing in Angular is called directives. Now, what is directive? What directive does, it does 3 things. First, it may change attribute. It may change attribute of a HTML element. So HTML element is a button, HTML element is those things, right? So if you want to change attribute of that element, for example, if you want to change a height of a HTML of a button, that's a very, very simple example, but just to make you understand. If you want to change attribute of HTML element, you create a directive in Angular, and that is called attribute directive. Okay. So one example of attribute directive could be, let's say that there's a text box in your Angular application. In that text box, you are asking your user to enter credit card information. Now, credit card information could have certain requirements, means it should not be more than 16 characters. It should be only numbers. There should be dash after each 4 digit, and so on. There could be multiple requirement for a valid credit card, right? So now you have an input text box, but you want that input text box to act as a credit card text box. So you need to change attribute of that input text box. So input element is a default HTML element, and you want to change attribute of that element such that it acts as a credit card text box. You create a attribute directive. How to do that? We would cover that. I guess it is tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Okay, but you understand what is the purpose of attribute directive. It could be as simple as just changing height of a button. So changing height is also changing attribute, or changing the background color of a text, and so on. And it could be as complex as converting a text box as a credit card text box. Or let's say that if you have a Google Map control, which is by default in Angular now, you want to change some of the attribute that wherever there is a COVID detection center, there should be a that should be displayed in a RAID, or there should be a pin on top of that. So you are changing the attribute of that Angular component or HTML controls, and you do that using attribute directive. So everyone clear what is attribute directive? And 95% times you create custom attribute directive, means you create your own attribute directive. And we learned that how to do that. Okay, 95% times we'll create our own custom attribute directive, because always we would have our own requirement, business requirement. So the first type of directive is called custom attribute directive, and it changes attribute of HTML elements. The second type of directive is called structured directives. What a structure directive does, it changes a structure of HTML elements. So for example, if that image, component is displayed once, if you want to display that 10 times, you use a structure directive. It changes the structure of that element or component. If you want to show or hide a component on basis of some scenario, some condition, it means we're changing a structure of that particular component, or due to a structure directive, the structure of DOM gets changed. DOM means that HTML gets changed. So that is called a structure directive, to change the structure of elements. And in Angular has given us a lot of default structure directives, such that ngIf, ngFor, and so on. 95% times you use them, and very, very rarely you create custom structure directive. Okay, very rarely. I have not seen in my 4 years of career of Angular anyone is creating a structured custom directive. Okay, a custom structure directive, sorry. But of course we'll use ngIf, ngFor. So anything which you see in Angular which is starting with a star, that is a structure directive. So there's attribute directive, there's a structure directive, and the third type of directive is called component, which you have been learning since morning. So in Angular, there are three types of directives: attribute directive to change the attribute of HTML elements or components, custom attribute directive to change the structure of the whole DOM or that particular component or HTML elements, and component to create a new element. So what component does? It creates a new element, right? Which you saw, app root, app grid, etc. So these are the three types of directives in Angular. Any question on directives, anyone? Yeah, what is the question? We are good to go?
Yeah, we are good.
So we will now see how to use these structure directive, which is provided to us by Angular, such that star ngIf, star ngFor, etc. Okay. Please go on mute. Yeah. So what I'm going to do here, just give me a moment, everyone. Uh, okay, so what I'm doing that, so you share. Okay, so what I have done, can you see my Visual Studio Code now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so in Visual Studio Code, what I have done here, just to show you something, in the assets folder, I have put some images. Okay, these are some images I am using. I have put that. I'm going to use that. Of course, in real application, you will download those images. I mean, those images would never be part of the assets folder. It would be on the server, and through API, you'll access that. Anyway, so here what I'm going to do, I have this app grid. I'm getting rid of that, or let it be, because I'll share this code with you. So I'm keeping it there. And in the app component.ts, as of now, just comment that, okay? And we'll write code, we'll learn directives in app component itself. Okay, so here I'm going to say product component. Okay, sorry, product app. So let's say that in the right here in our app.component.ts, and instead of hard coding that, here we can say all right. Now what I'm going to do, let's say that we have a function here called get products. Okay, and but before that, let's create let us create a interface which will represent the product type. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create here, right here, I'll say that, hey, I product.ts. I product.ts means I means it is an interface. So here I'm saying I'm creating a interface to represent the products. So Control V, I product. It's just interface, product ID, product name, product code, release date, price description, start rating, image URL. Okay. Next, in the app.component.ts, what I'm going to do, I'm going to write a function get products. And that function is nothing but it is returning product ID, product name, product code, price, start rating, and the image URL. And already we have this image inside assets folder. It is giving us error. People who are new, see how I'm resolving it. I'm helping you that when you write, how you can improve your productivity. So it is telling me, see, there is some error, cannot find iProduct. On Windows machine in Visual Studio Code, I'm pressing Control and dot. After selecting that, Control and dot, it is giving me some options. I know I need to import it from iProduct. I'll select that. It is imported here. Okay. So here we have created a function called get products, and that function is just returning us JSON object. Of course, in real application, that would come from the API. Okay. So it has product ID, product, and everything. Next, in app component is something called. Now, what is that on, init, and all? We would cover that as of now. Just understand that on init is called lifecycle hook. So a component in its life means a component is getting loaded in the browser and then getting destroyed in the browser. There are certain function Angular calls in the life cycle of that component, and that is called life cycle hooks of that component. We would cover that in detail later. ng-on-init is a life cycle hook, means a function which gets called just after the constructor of that component getting executed. So this is the first function where first lifecycle hook which gets called. That is not entirely true. Before that, there is one more lifecycle hook called ng-on-changes gets called and all, and how that depends on, we would cover that tomorrow. But as of now, you assume that ng-on-init gets called. It gets called when you are initializing the component. So a component is a class, so you could have a constructor, and it has an ng-on-init. So here, let's say that we are saying console.log, and let's say C, and then in ng-on-init we are saying console.log init. Okay, so now if I go and run this application here in the product app, you are able to see the browser.
Yes.
Yes.
So in the F12, if I press F12, you see first C is called and then init is called. In the console, you can see that, right? First C and then init is called. So when an Angular component is getting loaded, first constructor gets called, very first constructor gets called, and after that only any lifecycle hook gets called. This constructor and init is only gets called once in the life cycle of a component. Other life cycle hook depends that how many times they would get called, and we would cover that tomorrow. So now, whenever you make, and this is a best practice, you should know that whenever you are calling something outside this component, like you are making an API call, or you are calling a function which is inside an Angular service and all, make sure that you do that inside ng-on-init, not inside constructor. Because constructor, as you know from your engineering or MCA or BCA background, that constructor is a function which is used to construct object of that class. So here constructor is to construct object of app component. Now let's say that you are calling an API here, which takes 20 milliseconds. Now what would happen, that Angular will wait 20 milliseconds even to construct object of this component, which you don't want. And if by any reason there is some error, then Angular would fail to even construct object of that component if you write this API calling and all those code inside constructor. So always you got to write those code inside ng-on-init, such that you don't disturb the component's object creation. And ng-on-init, once object is created, then you are making an API call. And even if it is some API call is throwing some error and all, your component's object is being created. So always it is a best practice to call an API or call a service and make an external function call, etc. inside ng-on-init. Okay, everyone. So here, let's say that we have title product app. I hope constructor and ng-on-init is clear to each one of you. Always in a component lifecycle, constructor gets called first, and after that ng-on-init gets called, and they both gets called only once in the lifecycle of the component. Okay, now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create a variable called products. You are able to see my screen, right? Code, Visual Studio Code.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so here I declared a variable products. Type of that is iProduct array, and by default, it is an empty array. Now here it is hard coded, but in reality, it can come from API, right? So here I'm saying that hey, inside ng-on-init, not in the constructor. Now you understand why I'm doing that inside ng-on-init. I'm saying that hey, this dot products is equal to this dot get products. Okay, and then I'm saying console.log this dot products. So let's say that now our component has the data, save it. And if we go back and now our component has data. So let me go and see whether we have that or not. So here you are able to see my browser. And in the browser, you see that we have that array here, right? Now we have that data. We got to display it because displaying data in a console is not useful for our user. So to do that, let's say that we want to display that in a table. Okay, so let's go here in the app.component.html. And here we can take a table. Then inside table, we can say t-head. Okay. And let's say that in t-head, we are first displaying ID, product, code, available, price, star, rating. Okay. And then we have the body. And inside that, we want to display the TR. So of course, it will have TD. Now, what do we want? That this row should be repeated as many times we have number of items in this products. So for that, we are changing a structure of the DOM, a structure of the element, and we will use a structure directive. And how we will do that? We'll use a star ng for a structure directive. So here on this TR will say ng for let. Okay, so here we are saying ng for let product of products. Okay, and here then you can use interpolation to display. And here you can say product dot, here you want to display the ID. So ID is in product ID. So here you can say product dot product ID. In the same way, we can display other properties. So Control D, Control C, Control C, Control C, Control C. So here product ID, product name, then product code. After product code is release date. So available is release date. Then we don't have description, no price. Okay, so take price from here and put price. After price, we have a star rating. So one more TD here, and we'll say star rating. Okay, so once again, what I have done, I'm using a star ng for, which is a structure directive inside the table, and then using for off loop, let product off products. So this product, for each item in products array, this product contains that particular row, and then we are iterating that, and then using interpolation, we are just using the property dot notation and displaying that. So if everything is okay, we should have some output here, which you see. So here you see that you have in the table, you are able to see that output ID, product code, available, price, rating. Let me go and use Bootstrap to make that a little bit okay. Of course, you can install Bootstrap in your Angular application, and you should always do that. But just for the sake of this training, I'm going to use Bootstrap CDN. So Control P, I want to put it in index.html, and right here I'll say Control V. Okay, so here we have put that, and then we can apply some table, some class, Bootstrap class there. So let's go there and right here in app.component.html, we can put this whole thing inside a div. So div class row. And take this gentleman from here and put it here. And then you can say table class table. And this can be h1 class text center and text, let's say danger for read. So file, save, and we can put all of them together inside a div class container. I'm not an expert of CSS. You may be knowing CSS much more than me. I'm just using basic classes of Bootstrap. So save. And then now here we can, if you see my screen, you see that now we are able to get that in some okay form. So here to get this, we are using a star ng for and all that. All right, now we have image also to display, right? So far we have used a structure directive and we have used interpolation. That's it. Now we have image also. Now how we can display the image? So to display the image, what we can do, we can right here first, let's create a space for image. So here let's say th, and here we want to display the image. So td. Now we have this img. Okay, now we can set this source of image using the property binding, and we can say src equal to, okay, and here we can say product dot, and what is the image URL. So product dot image URL. Let's see that whether we are able to get it. Save, and if you look at my screen, we are able to get image, but of course that image is like kind of, we need to set height, width, and all of that. Okay, so let's come back here. And you are able to see my Visual Studio?
Yes.
All right. Yes. So now here we are saying that, okay, app.component.ts, and let's say that we create two variables right here to set height and width of that image. So right here we can say image width equal to 50 and image margin equal to 2. And then using the property binding, we can go and set that. So how we can set, anyone can help me? How should I set that? Width of this image? You just learned that. Tell me how, what should I do? To set the width of that image? A square bracket.
Style dot width dot px. Style dot width dot px.
Dot px. Perfect. Equal to
variable.
Whatever is the variable name, right? Image width. Okay. Perfect. So here image width, and then in the same way I can set margin also. So I can say style dot margin dot px equal to and I can take it from here, image margin. Oh, image margin right here, and then get rid of this. It looks okay now. So what we have done, everyone, using the property binding to set the src, then set to set the width and to set the margin. Okay, now file and save, and let's come back to our screen, and here you can see that our image looks okay. Okay, now what we want, that we want a button on the top that if user wants to display the image, see the image, it's okay. User should click that button. If user want to hide that image, on toggle of that button, we should be able to show or hide that image. And how we can do that? So for that, what I'm going to do, very first, in app.component.ts, let's say that we are creating a variable called showImage. On basis of that, we would either display that image or not. And then in app.component.html, in here, let's say that create a button right here. So we'll say button, and let's say show image, and this button is class btn, and let's say that btn danger. So there should be one button there, save, and on the click of this button, we want to say, let's say show image. We want to call that show image function. So we need to call this function show image. We need to first create that function show image, and here we can create that show image. Oh no, so those are same names. So let's say that here we are calling it toggle image. Okay, so Control C, and here let's say that toggle image. So whenever user clicks on that, we need to say this dot show image is equal to this dot show image. Whatever is the value, just toggle to that. If it is true, make it false. If it is false, make it true. And then what we need to do, that by using that show image, we need to either display that image or not display that image. So here that value is show image, and take this, go to app.component.html, and in the image right here, we'll use another structure directive ngIf and say ngIf show image. So if it is true, this image would be displayed. If it is not true, that image would not be displayed. And also here, always we have show image. We can even click on that and say that, hey, and here you are learning that how you can use condition inside interpolation, that if show image, value of show image is true. So if value of show image is true, then you show hide, right? Hide image. And if it is false, then show. So file, save. Let's go back to here. And when you are able to see my screen, let me know. The browser. You're able to see the browser?
Yeah, we can see.
Yes.
So here you see that you have a button show image. When you click on that button, you're able to see the image. The text has been changed to hide image. Then when you click on again, that is gone, and the text has changed to show image. Now, in this application, your learning should be that only by using data binding and a structure directive, you are able to create a decent looking app, right? This is the power of Angular. So far, in whatever you see on your screen, for that we are using bindings, means to display, we are using interpolation. To work with image, we are using property binding. To work with this button, we are using event binding. Then to again display or hide, we are using star ngIf with the image. And to show all the records from products, we are using star ngFor. So only we have used star ngFor, star ngIf. Both are structured directives. Then we have used event binding and interpolation and property binding, and we created a component. And here is one application in front of you. So this is the power of Angular. I'll share this code with you. If you have any question, feel free to ask before we move to next topic. Please ask questions, everyone. No questions?
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So the ngFor in a if in products array we add another item, then it will automatically display, or we need to like refresh the page, or
Let's do that. Okay. So let me share my screen. So you can see my browser, right? Sorry, Visual Studio Code.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go to app.component.ts. And here, let's add one more, as you said, right here, Control C, comma, and here, let's call it product 11. Okay, and instead of video game, let's say that we call it mobile game. Product code is 009, a standard mobile game controller. Okay, price is, let's say, 40, and a star rating is, let's say, perfect 5. Okay, and it is, let's say, saw.png. We are just changing the image. So here I have added one more product. I'm saving it. Okay, and now when I go to the browser, you see that this 11th is already there. Can you see that?
Yes.
We have not refreshed, done nothing. And that is happening due to a concept called change detector. We would cover that in detail.
Okay.
Very good question. I'm expecting more questions, everyone. Yeah, there's a question in chat. Let me see that first. Oh, I'm not able to open the chat. What was the question? Can someone read for me?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Can it be possible that whenever we load this HTML page, when images are not loading at the initial page, and when we click on button, then and then it comes up from the server or that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be possible in this, or how can
Of
we?
course. Of course, of course. So let me understand your question. You are asking that an image should be loaded when we refresh a page.
I think image should be loaded when we click on button, but until then it should not get from the server.
Oh, we'll cover those things later, buddy.
Yeah.
Okay, when we'll learn API, integration, interceptor, and all those things. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. And if if I forget, remind me when we do API and all.
Sure.
So everyone, for the class, if any of your question is not getting answered, you got to note down and remind me again. Sometimes when you ask that question, it is not the right, like that is not the appropriate time to answer that for the benefit of whole class. Okay. So I may not answer and park it for the latter, but I may forget. So you got to ask me that question again. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Now, so far you have learned about okay. So far you have learned, we have learned about Angular CLI. You installed that, then you created a new Angular application. We learned about modules. We learned about components. We learned about directives. Then we use star ng for, we use star ng if, and of course we learned about data bindings. Okay. Next, let's say that your manager is back with a new requirement. Your manager is saying that, hey, this looks really good, very nice, but can you show me this product in uppercase? Or can you show me this price attached with dollar? Means there should be a currency symbol next to that, something like that. Now, and this is very important, everyone. our data is saved in this form. Like our data is like this leaf rate on the server, in the database. Data is not saved in the uppercase. In the same way, on the server, the price is not saved with the currency symbol. Price is right there in numeric form. But our manager wants only for the UI to display this product in the uppercase. Manager or customer does not want to change the data as it is saved. What manager or customer is only expecting that, hey, don't change the underlying structure of the data. However data is stored, let it be. Only in displaying can you change it to the uppercase. Requirement is clear. So for that, Angular comes with a feature. There's a feature in Angular called pipe. Now what pipe does? So what pipe does? So what Angular pipe does, it takes an input and give us, or you can say pipe us, pipe the input. Let's say that, or input, and transform the input to a specified output, okay, without changing the underlying architecture of input data. So here our product name has a data which is not in the uppercase. Let's say that we pass that to uppercase pipe. It will give us uppercase product name, but this product name data will be exactly the same. Okay, making sense? So what pipe does, pipe takes an input and it gives you an output without changing the data. Pipe is nothing. Pipe is a function. That's it. Pipe is the simplest thing in Angular. So pipe is a function. You give an input to pipe. It transforms that input to a specified output without changing the underlying structure of the data. Okay. Now Angular has given us a lot of inbuilt pipe. So we call them as built-in pipes, which you can use in Angular. There are many, and for your business requirement, you can create your own custom pipes as well. So here in this case, to work with, let's say for the uppercase, Angular has given us an uppercase pipe. I'll just go here and let's say that product name. And this is the symbol to apply pipe, that is a pipe symbol. And to convert that product name to uppercase, I'll just say uppercase. And this uppercase pipe is provided to us by Angular. In the same way, to convert that date to a date format, we'll say date. Again, that is given to us by Angular. And this pipe, date pipe and all, they takes a lot of input parameter, which you can read on their documentation. Then in the price, you can say currency. There's a currency pipe. So we can just simply apply that. This uppercase date and currency pipe and save it. And here, if you see my screen, now you see that this product is in uppercase. The date format has been changed and there's a dollar next to price. If you want to apply rupees, just go and read the documentation for currency pipe and you know how to apply rupees. And here, if you press F12, you see that in underlying data, the data is still leaf lake. This price is still 19.95. So the pipe has not changed the underlying data. Data is as it is. Only for the display, for the output purpose, it has applied the pipe and giving us the specified output. Angular has given you a lot of inbuilt pipe, which you can use. Right here, we are using uppercase pipe for the product. We are using date pipe for the available, and we are using currency pipe for the price. You may have a requirement to create a custom pipe as well. So for example, here we want that, let's say that there's a lot of data here and we want to filter right here. We want to filter here that if user is typing, let's say that leaf, only leaves should be displayed here. We are not doing anything on the server. We are only filtering on the data which is already available here. The data which is already available in the client side. And for that, and without changing the underlying architecture of the data, we can create a pipe. So to create a pipe, what you can do, again, you can apply a pipe using the Angular CLI, you can create that. So let's say that I am creating a pipe. I'll call it NGGP, ng generate pipe. And let's say that that pipe is product search, NGGP product search. So here it has created a product search.pipe.ts. It has created a product search pipe.spec.ts, means you can write unit test for pipe. And then it has updated app.module.ts as well. Okay, so now you are able to see Visual Studio Code. In Visual Studio Code, you see that here it has created product search.pipe.ts. And in app.module.ts, you will see that it has declared that product search pipe inside ng module. Okay, now let's see that how we can write that code in product search pipe. So here in the product search, and we are creating a custom pipe here. Always the pipe, this is a format that this is a name of your pipe. Is export, and you have to use decorator pipe to create a component. For the component, you use decorator component, and I'll talk about more options inside component decorator later. And in the same way, for a module, you create a decorator star ng module. Okay, so for the pipe, you use the decorator star pipe. So this is name of your pipe. This is a class, and it always implements pipe transform, which has a function transform. And as I told you, that transform function takes an input and gives us an output. And by default, it has a syntax. If you want, you can follow that syntax, or you can modify that syntax according to your requirements. So here, what I'm going to do, I know that for me, the value is not unknown, but of type iProduct. We want to apply that on an iProduct array because our data is in a product array, right? And also that I know you are able to see my Visual Studio Code, right?
Yeah.
And I know that I'm going to pass my argument in string. So here I'm saying arguments as string, and from here we want to again return or array only of that. And here we don't want to return null. Okay, so we modified that. Our value, our input value is of type iProduct array. The search criteria, the filter is of, the argument is of type string, and as an output it returns iProduct array. So line number 9 is clear to everyone? Is your input value, is your arguments, is your output type. And inside that, you just have to write your code. So how we would say that? We would say that if, so here we would say, if there's no argument, then return the whole value, means user is not searching anything. Otherwise, we are using JavaScript filter. We are using JavaScript array filter function here, and then array arrow function here. So here we are saying item.filtered. If item.product name has argument.to lowercase, then return that. Otherwise, don't return that. So it's line number 13 is pure JavaScript filter functionality, like just pure JavaScript code, no TypeScript, nothing. Again, in the filter, so the JavaScript array filter method takes a callback function. Here we are passing the JavaScript arrow function, where we are checking that if the item which is being passed, that product name, and we are converting that to lowercase, contains some of the string which we are passing in the arguments, then return that. Otherwise, don't return that. Okay, so here we created that pipe. Today we are not, so see here on the last day I would teach you that right now we don't know whether this pipe which we created is implemented correctly or not. To test it, we have to use it inside a component, right? But in real application, you write a unit test for it. You'll go ahead and you'll write something inside this to test the functionality of that pipe. And then you would use on the component. We are not doing it right now. We'll directly use it on the component. But that is the way you write your real application. Everyone clear about that? Yes, no?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So what I'm going to do in app component, we want to use that. So what I'm going to do here, I will right here create one div class row, and here I'm creating an input placeholder search products class form control, okay, and type text, and here using the two-way data binding in G model. So whatever user type in that value should get assigned to variable search text. So here we have search text. So we got to create that. We got to create a search text variable, and you can create that search text as on the app.component.ts. So let's go to app.component.ts, and in the search text, here we are saying search text. Okay. So this code should be clear to you, two-way data binding. Now we can apply that pipe, and we want to apply that pipe on this array. So we'll say this, okay. So that's the way you use pipe. And what is our pipe name? Our pipe name is product search. So product search. Okay, and then you pass input using the colon, and our input is in variable. Input is in variable search text. So product search and search text. File, save. So what we have done, we are applying this pipe and passing the input. So product search has this is the argument. Input is this array. So product search, which you created here, has input in iProduct array, argument that search text, and it returns you as we have written that. So save it, and let's go back and see how it is working. Okay, so you see that you have these search products here on the top. I start writing leaf, and it is searching that there. Okay, so, and keep in mind, it is not doing anything on the server. It is only filtering the data which is right there in my application in that products array. If I press F12 here, you see that underlying data will not change. So here, leaf, even if user is seeing one data, still this array has a 6 record. It means it is not changing the underlying architecture of the data. So here we have created a custom pipe. Mainly you create custom pipe for this functionality, search and filter. Otherwise, many custom pipe is given to us by Angular, like uppercase pipe, which we are using here. So here we are using one custom pipe, product search, then uppercase pipe given by Angular, then date pipe, then currency pipe. Okay, so this is all about pipe. I am ready to take questions.
Sanjay, one question. How can you make these pipes and other components reusable?
How you make this pipe? You want to use this pipe in another component?
Yeah, reusable.
This pipe is reusable. You can use it anywhere. But this pipe works on iProduct array. So let's say that we have a grid component also here, right? Okay. Let's say that grid component also has one get products. but it has some different data there. So just let's say that the grid component, and it has only product ID and product name, for example, right? So different set of data there, but on the same iProducts array, it may tell me maybe that, okay, or we can do one thing here. Let's say that any as of now, see whether it works or not. Okay, so keep in mind that pipe will only work on input type iProducts array, or we have to pass the type any, but let's see how it goes. And here, let's say that I have one products, and in ng on it, I am saying this dot products equal to this dot get products. And here in gris.component.html, we are just displaying that. So here, let's say that, sorry, Control Z. Here, let's say that we have grid component. Okay, and here you have a table. And that table you are just displaying tr star ng4 let p of prod products. And if everything is okay, then td, and here we can say p dot product ID, and then p dot product name. Let's say it is class table, and let's put everything in a row. And again, also it has a input type text placeholder search in grid, and also it has ng model equal to s text. Making sense? Now go to grid.component.ts, and here let's say that s text equal to nothing. First, let's see that whether we are able to get that data or not. Okay, so save, and in app.component.html, we'll uncomment this file, save, and here, if you see my screen, I have that search grid component right there, right on the top. Bottom, it is working fine. Product component. Okay.
Yep.
Grid component. Right now, we have to write attach the pipe, but we are able to see that data. So to do that, we have to just attach that pipe. And how we are using that pipe? Like this, product search text. So take that gentleman from here and go to your grid.component.html and put it here. But instead of search text, you want s text. Let's see what happens. Save, and you are able to see my browser. Yeah. So first, let's see whether previous one is working or not. That is working fine. And it is also returning hammer. No. Yeah. See, on the top you have hammer. Here you have leaf rake. Can you see that?
Yes.
So it's working fine.
Yep.
And just to make it a little bit okay, I'll say class equal to, what was that? Forms control. Class is form control C, and then so now it will look better. And what I can do right here in app dot, we can say HR. So it will, you can differentiate. What are you able to see? Browser or Visual Studio Code? Code. Okay. So now in the browser, so you have this grid component here, and you have this product component here. Here's show image. Here, let's say we are searching on basis of garden. So there's a garden cart, and then here we are searching on the basis of, let's say, game. So you have video game controller, mobile game controller at the garden cart. So the same pipe by nature is reusable, and we are able to reuse it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say we have some incompatible types between the two arrays, right? So I think both the types are compatible, so it worked. But in the pipe, the input parameter.
But of course, it would not work, right? That's the whole purpose of pipe, right? If you look at the implementation of pipe here, let me show you. If you look at, it says that this pipe will transform only iProduct array type. For other type, you got to create another type. If you go and change it to any, your job will be done, but that is not a best practice. Making sense?
Yes.
That's what pipe is. Like, for example, my friend, if you, let's say that, go to app.component.html, right? Where we are using some default pipes. So for example, if you apply this currency pipe on a date, what would happen? Try that.
That won't work.
Yeah. Every pipe has an input type, and then it transforms to a output depending on your business logic. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you go to the grid component HTML, sorry, TS file?
Sure.
I have one question. Okay, so scroll down. So here the data return type is any, right? It is not of the type iProduct array. Still the pipe is, still we have used the pipe and it is working fine. But currently you have said it should not work. Or something I misunderstood.
No. You are right. You are asking a right question. Actually, how to answer that? So actually, okay. When you create a class, can you create an object of that class without assigning value to all the properties? Yes or no?
Yes, we can create.
Yeah. So here actually TypeScript is complaining that, hey, if I'm passing it here iProduct, it is complaining about that hey, why you are not setting other properties? So just to avoid that, I can go ahead and say that I have done this any. But when we are passing this in the pipe from here, from grid.component.html, this is actually subset of iProduct only. So that's why it is working. But here, let's say that this products array has entirely different field. It will not work. Because in the in the pipe, you have done the condition on product name. So let's say you are passing a type from there, which does not have product name. Of course, it would not filter. So keep in mind that JavaScript and TypeScript, TypeScript tries to impose some of the type, but and it will try to give you some warning or error in Visual Studio Code. But JavaScript, at the end of the day, it has to compile to JavaScript, and JavaScript is a typeless language. So all these we do to write our Angular in best practice way. I can go and get rid of this code also, which right now our TypeScript is complaining, just by modifying my tsconfig.json file. Am I making sense to you?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
keep in mind that it is not a strongly typed language. So it's not one-to-one mapping how you can think in C# or Java. Okay. But
Okay.
as much as possible, try to avoid, as much as possible, 100% times it would not be possible for you in development of your application, but as much as you could, try to avoid any. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
How can we create means pipe with multiple arguments, more than one? So if you want to pass more than one argument to,
Tell me what you want to do here.
let's say we want to pass two arguments, height and width.
Oh, you are talking about arguments here?
Yeah, yes.
Very good. Let's say I also don't know answer of that question. And I'm showing you how you can find out yourself. Okay. Go to this pipe transform. And can you see what is the definition of args? What is the type of args?
Yes, it is arrays. Any array.
So you got your answer?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Only for my purpose, I changed that to string.
Okay, got it. Got it.
Good questions. More questions, please. Everyone good with pipe and everything we have covered so far? We have around 27 people in the class.
Hello,
everyone.
Hello.
So today what I'll do, I'll put this code on my GitHub. Hello.
Hello. Is my voice audible?
Yeah. Please ask.
So, sir, can we change this pipes implementation to, yes, it is searching on product name. So can we search on whatever fields are available? Can we do it that way?
What is your name?
Shank.
Sasank. Okay.
Ushank.
Isank.
Yeah.
See this line number 13?
Yeah.
This line number 13 has nothing to do with Angular, has nothing to do with TypeScript. This is your pure business logic written in JavaScript. So do whatever you want to do there.
Yeah. Okay.
You understand? This is just a function. Inside transfer function, write whatever you want to write to achieve your business need.
Yeah.
Good questions. Next question.
Yes, sir. So I have this question. Let's say I have created some pipe which like is very complex, and I want to publish this somewhere as a package so that later if I want to use it in my other projects, so let's say some other guy wants to use that. So is that possible?
Of course possible. So you can do that in two ways. Okay. One is that you can just publish that. I mean, you can manually give it to them, but there is something called Angular library.
Okay.
So you have to incorporate whatever you want to share across multiple projects and multiple location as Angular library, and then you can publish that Angular library to NPM. Either you can publish it to your private your organization NPM repository, or you can publish to that global NPM repository. And once that is published, anyone would go and just say NPM install, and they should be able to get it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure whether we have Angular library in our agenda or not. If it is not there, I'll cover that anyway. I'll show you how to publish a simple pipe in Angular library. Okay. Any other question? No more questions on same? Hello, am I audible?
Yes. No, we are good.
Okay, so now how I think that would be the best. I'm not sure Mahendra is here on the call or not. So after this training or daily, we would follow that I will, you will have this recording available, but recording will take some time to be available. Like it will take like 3 to 4 hours. But just after this call, I'll publish this code on my npm, sorry, on my GitHub, and you can just in the GitHub you can just go and find it and use it for the reference. Will that help?
Yeah.
And it is advisable that every day you do what we do in a practice. Okay. Okay. Let us move to the next topic. So here you see that in app.component.html, here we are using this app grid. So we can say app grid component is a child component of app component. Okay. And we'll cover more about parent component and child component tomorrow. All right. So next, what I want to do, I guess we cover Shadow DOM today, or should we cover Shadow DOM tomorrow? I'm just thinking about that. Okay. Let us say that we want to have one more component in our application. Sharing, new share. When you see my command prompt, let me know.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, so let's add one more component. Let's say that ngGC, and let's say that component name is foo component. And I'm putting flat. Flat means it will not create its own folder for foo. It will be right there. Okay, everyone? So
Okay.
here,
Yes.
here I'm seeing ngGC foo flat. So it has created all those files, put this ng serve. And again, let's go back to the Visual Studio Code. You're able to see Visual Studio Code now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just give me a moment. Okay, now next topic what we are talking about Shadow DOM. Now what happens? So now what is Shadow DOM? So everyone, if you have done a little bit of ASP.NET or those kind of technologies, you know there's a concept of user control. Like you create a control and then you can give that control to other people to work with. In the same way, in JavaScript, we did not have the type of control before, but or in the world of HTML, we did not have the top. We had like if you want to create a user control, your user control would be a combination of HTML plus CSS plus JavaScript. Agree? You can create a control using these HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and you can package them together as a web component. It's not an Angular component. It's a web component. Okay. So HTML has something called web component. HTML specification has something called web component. And what web component does, it allows us to share our control, which we create using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript with other projects and so on. Now, as you know that Angular, that in this web component, there are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, JavaScript, we know in JavaScript we can have encapsulation of variable and everything using modules. So we can have module, and as we talked in the beginning of today, that the modules encapsulate the variable. So a lifetime of a variable or a visibility of a variable is inside a module, and the functions, etc., inside that module. And we can talk about variable hoisting and all of JavaScript if required, but roughly you can understand like that. However, CSS does not have encapsulation. What I mean by that, let's say that I created something called web component 1, and that web component 1 has that web component 1.css. And that makes a button as red. Let's say that I have created a style where I'm making button as a red. So there's a button in my web component, and I'm making that the color of that button is red. Now you have created another web component 2, and in that CSS you are saying button is green. Now there is one application. That application is using web component 1, and it is using web component 2 both. Now what would happen in the browser? The CSS of web component 1 and CSS of web component 2 both would get downloaded. So if CSS of web component 2 gets downloaded after CSS of web component 1, then all the button would become green. If CSS of web component 1 gets downloaded after the web component 2, then all the buttons would become red. Right? How it is the way it works, CSS works, because there is no encapsulation in CSS. And that is the problem, because when we create controls, when we create custom control, people would use custom control. Let's say that I created a custom control and I'm giving you it as a web component. You don't know what CSS styling I'm using. I may have use that, hey, make all the buttons green. Now if that you are using that control and you don't want your application button also become green depending on that, because you may have your own requirement to make to put the styling. So how to solve that? You understand the problem? Everyone understand the problem? What is the problem here?
Yes.
So there is a concept called shadow DOM. What shadow DOM does, it encapsulates. So what shadow DOM does, it encapsulates the CSS. Okay, so if this web component 1 is created following to shadow DOM standard, or if this web component creates its control as a shadow DOM, whatever CSS is defined for web component 1 would only be visible in web component 1. In the same way, if web component 2 is creating its component as shadow DOM, then whatever CSS is created for web component 2 would be only encapsulated inside web component 2. In this way there would be no collision of CSS, and shadow DOM actually allows you to encapsulate the CSS in that particular web component or that particular HTML element. So you understand now what is the purpose of shadow DOM? What problem shadow DOM solves? Everyone, yes?
Yeah.
Now what happens that when you create that Angular component, so when you create an Angular component, that Angular component is a kind of reusable control, right? And it has HTML, it has CSS, and it has TypeScript. Now, as we talked, that your application can have a style in style.css, and then it can have 100 of components, and each component may have their own styles. Then we may have a parent component, and there could be a child component inside that, and then child component can have its own style, parent component can have its own style. Then how they work together depends on whether Angular components creates a shadow DOM or not. So most of the time, when I talk to people and I ask them that, hey, do Angular component create shadow DOM? Answer is yes, answer is no. So let's see that how shadow DOM and Angular component works. So for that, what I have done here is, you can see my Visual Studio Code now.
Yes.
Can you see? Yeah. So let's say that, let us say that here in app.component.html, I'm just going to comment it, okay? Whatever we have written. And let's say that I have one here, here, let's say that I have one just a div, and inside div I have one h1, and let's say that is called app component. Okay, and in app component h1, so here we are having h1, and then in app component dot css I have created a style called h1 background red, color white, text transform uppercase, text align center. And right now, if we go and run this application, so here you see that if you see the browser, you see that that app component is red, background is red and white. Making sense? Okay. Now, let's say that I have one child component also, which we have already created the child component here. You remember that, you see that foo component is not inside a folder because we put a flat tag there. So here in the foo component also we have one h1, and it says foo child component. Okay, and we are going to use this foo component here. So now we have this app foo, and we are using that in app.component.html below that. Okay, so we have this app foo. Now here there is a h1 in the parent component, and app foo is a child component, and it also has a h1. In the parent component, we have made that h1 color as red. And let's see that how that affects behavior of app foo. Inside app foo, we have h1. So I'm here, and if you look at the screen, in the browser, you see that for h1 of the parent component, it has changed to red. However, it has not affected h1 of child component. So whatever CSS you created for parent component is only encapsulated for parent component, and it is not going beyond that. Parent component. That is why child component does not get that h1 styling. Is it clear from output, everyone?
Yes.
Yes. So by looking at this behavior, you may have by looking at this behavior, you may have you may think that since a styling of app component is not getting is encapsulated only to app component, and it is not getting even applied to its child component, means Angular component creates shadow DOM. Because I just taught you that to encapsulate CSS inside its control, you need to create a shadow DOM, right? That may come to your mind, but that is not true, because if you go to this, if you inspect this here, so if you inspect this guy right here, okay, and if you look at this code in the inspect, can you see that you have app root and then you have app foo, and this app foo is part of that app root, means it is a child component. And here in app root, can you see there is something called there's some attribute ng host fc17, ng content c17, ng content fws c17. However, for app foo, for the h1 inside app foo, this is ng content fwh c16. For H1 for AppRoot, that is C17. For H1 for AppFoo, that is C16. Now, if you go to the head section here, and in the head section, you can see there are two styles. One style is right here, which is for the global styling. We don't have any styling there. Then here in the style, you see that it has created H1 styling, but it has put the attribute FWHC17. And FWHC17 is only applicable with H1 of AppRoot. Can you see that? NG content FWHC17 and then NG content FWC17. And for the AppFoo H1, that is FWHC16. And that is the reason that by doing that, Angular is encapsulating the CSS. Angular is, and by doing that, the CSS is encapsulated in that component class only. So even though CSS is encapsulated, it does, Angular by default does not create shadow DOM. Is it clear, everyone? However, if you want, you can change that behavior. So far, everyone clear what I'm showing? So here, here you see there is something in the component decorator. There is something called encapsulation property, like selector, template URL, style URLs. There is a property called encapsulation, and you can set that value to view encapsulation dot. You see that you have three options here. Emulated, which is default. If you don't set it, this is the value set, which the behavior which we just saw is the emulated behavior. Then there is something called none. If you do none and look at the output now, save, and here in the browser, and if I show you the browser here, can you see now this app component and foo child component both has red?
Yeah. Because
you are saying to Angular that, hey, don't encapsulate CSS of this component. Let it go everywhere. Now, if you look at the inspect, you see that AppFoo has C16, H1 has S16, and app component, whatever is there. But if you go to the head, and then if you go to the style, it has directly applied that styling to H1. It is not using any attribute or anything. So of course, this H1 now would be applied everywhere in application, wherever we are using H1, because it is directly applied to that. So that's the none mode. The third option is, here, you can say shadow DOM. So when you do shadow DOM, what would happen in this scenario? Angular will create shadow DOM and encapsulate the CSS. See, Angular was able to encapsulate the CSS in emulated mode also, but it was not creating shadow DOM for that. In shadow DOM, it would go and create shadow DOM for you. So here, let's come back. And if you look at the output, you are able to see my browser and inspect. And here you see that in the head section, there's nothing in style. However, for AppRoot, Angular has created a shadow DOM. Can you see that shadow root? And since this AppFoo component is child of app component, it is part of same shadow root. So that red is applied. And inside this shadow root, this shadow component, this shadow DOM, it has created a style for H1. So when you write your application, what you need to do always, that make sure that you are always working on the emulated mode. Make sure you are never working with the none mode. It means that CSS is leaked in whole application. And use shadow DOM only when you need to apply a CSS to a component and all is child component. If you use emulated, it will be applied only to that component. If we use none, it would be applied everywhere. And if you use shadow DOM, it would be applied to that component and all its child component. And of course, you can have global CSS inside a style.css. So if someone is asking you that, hey, do Angular component create shadow DOM by default? Your answer should be no, it does not create shadow DOM. then they may ask you that then how CSS of app component does not go to product component. Your answer should be it uses a mode called emulated mode. Okay, everyone, is it clear?
Yep.
All right. So today we covered a lot. If I look at here, so today we covered about components, child component, data binding, directives, pipes, shadow DOM, and you did that lab which we did. So if you have any question, you can ask. If you don't have question right now, it's okay. When you practice it at home or when you watch this video, recording of this video, you can ask me question. Tomorrow we start with previous day questions. And if today you have any question, feel free to ask. Is Mahendra on the call?
Yeah, Dhananjay.
Yeah, so what is the best way to give them source code of today such that they can practice if they want to?
You can also share GIF folder is also fine. GIF is also fine. Or
okay, so what I'll do, I'll upload GIF on Drive and share download URL with you.
Okay, that will be fine. Yeah.
And also, what you see on your screen, Angular Essential?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the book I have written. You can get this book from Amazon or anywhere, but all of you would get this ebook of this. So I may share today, or I'll wait for a day or two, such that you little bit practice. So whatever I'm covering, we don't have slides, but whatever we have covered, you can go and learn in this book. Step by step, I'm covering this book only. So for example, today, let's say that we covered data binding, right? So let's go to the data binding chapter. And here you see that component is combination of class, HTML, CSS. This is to generate component. And here it is talking about different things. So here's the data binding, interpolation, event binding, property binding, and some examples which you can further reference, learn. So you will have this ebook, you will have a source code of each day, and you will have recording of each day to practice. Please practice, because it is going to get deeper and deeper and deeper with each passing days. I'll probably share this ebook today itself with Mahendra, and to share with everyone so that you can practice.
Yeah, so you can share the recording ebook, and the recording will be, and if it will be late, but at least share this book and the examples.
Yeah, this book and source code I'll share you with next half an hour. Recording may take some time because in Zoom they take around 4 hours to render. Yeah. Yes. So whenever that is available, I'll share with you. But these two things I'll share in next half an hour. All right. So if you have any question, please ask. If you don't have, then I'll let you go. And tomorrow I'll see each one of you at 9 o'clock.
Tim, any question? I mean, we can also ask question tomorrow morning, first half. First 10 minutes.
No.
Otherwise, you can conclude.
Yeah, I think we are good.
Thank you so much, everyone. I hope your first day was informative. And I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dhananjay.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.